of insecurity in some places. What would you term as the general situation as it stands today? If for nothing else, give us comfort as Ugandans.
Thank you, Simon, and once again to our listeners, good morning. The general security situation in the country is stable. We don't have any specific threat to the elections or against elections. However, the joint security agencies have made general security threat assessment to the election. Top on the assessment or the threats is certainly COVID-19 throughout the country, but more specifically in the urban centers, starting with Kampala. And therefore, we urge the public, even on election day, to observe COVID-19 SOPs, which are really 4. 1, regular washing of hands, sanitizing the hands and any hard surface that you touch. 2, keep your face mask on if you're in a group of people. 3, keep social distance. And 4, observe general cleanliness, sanitation, wherever you are. And obviously, the curfew, as announced by government about 9 months ago, continue to prevail, which is 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
When we close our eyes and imagine the situation at the polling station of Onopondo, we know that we all gather there to come and cast our vote. One is inclined to ask what exactly is going to happen at a polling station on that day. Who's going to enforce the social distancing? How are we going to queue up to get our turn into that booth? The polling stations are known. There are 34,000 polling stations across the country. On average, no polling station has more than 800 people. The voting will start, we expect people to come at 7. By 8, polling should start and close at 4. When the polling closes, vote counting at the polling station begins, and announcement of results at that polling station should be made by the presiding officer at that polling station. We expect 2 agents of the respective candidates. This election on 14th, we are going to have presidential, directly elected members of parliament, and women member of parliament. On average, a polling station has, or rather a constituency, for example, has 5 candidates. We have 11 presidential candidates. That brings the number to about 40 agents of the candidates who are allowed to stay there. And that's why yesterday the police issued guidance to the public that as much as possible we should ensure that we the voters go and vote and withdraw from the polling station. You can keep to a further distance of about 20 meters. But we advise people, there is really no reason why people should stay at the polling station throughout the day. You can return at 4 for the counting of the votes. And now, we expect
the electoral
sorry
commission.
to interrupt you there, Ufonopondo, but right over there is where I say, when you say we return at 4 to witness the counting of the vote, one then asks, how is the enforcement of social distancing going to be?
Yes, the polling station is going to be secured by a string around. So we expect the electoral commission to have to ensure that the ground of the polling station is wide enough, is large enough to ensure that the agents and the polling officials can keep social distancing. Now, outside where people chew, we also expect that people are going to observe the minimum distance of at least 2 meters. We would want to encourage the public, and this is going to be addressed on Monday and Tuesday by the Electoral Commission, to ensure that there is social distancing in the chews. as people wait to vote. We are going to follow the normal procedure. When you enter the polling station, of course, we expect to be asked to identify yourself on the voters register. You should have your national ID. If you don't have the national ID, if your name is inspected, you should have the voter's slip, which should show you which polling station. Once you are identified positively, then you should go and pick. You will be given your ballot paper, and you take the candidates that you prefer. The second area of threat assessment is the general criminality, terrorism, and election-related violence. You have known, all of us have had groups saying that if elections don't go their way, they may cause trouble. The police yesterday issued strong warning. We want to encourage, we think that the majority of Ugandans are going to be law-abiding. The violence or intimidation most likely will point to an attempt to intimidate particularly vulnerable voters, older persons, perhaps women, but there's going to be general surveillance, security surveillance, so that nobody will effect their threats to intimidate voters, to suppress voters from not coming. We want to assure the public that voting will be peaceful. After voting, after elections, the country will continue to be peaceful because there is sufficient capacity to deal with any troublemakers.
Thank you so much, Ofona Pondo. Later on the program, when we host the police and army chiefs, they will be telling us the details of that reassurance that you just shared with us. But suffice it to say, I wish at this very juncture to welcome the latest guest on the dais on the program. Good morning. Welcome to the program, General Kaliba Kandwanaho, also fondly known as Salim Saleh. You are the Chief Coordinator of Operation Wealth Creation and also a Presidential Advisor on Defense. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good, sir. Nice seeing you after a long time, and Happy New Year.
Who are you?
I like that question because I'm all masked up with a cape on my head. Well, he's just joined in. My name is Simon Kasiate. I'm sitting in for the regular program host of this program, Oscar Semoya Msoke.
Nice to see you. After how many years? I don't know.
Well, we have to have that conversation off the microphone so that we can catch up on all good times.
Tell us the truth. No, I last saw him like 5 years ago, I think.
Tremendous. When I was much younger and looking a little better.
When I was starting the Kapeka Industrial Park, I think that's when we last talked.
I like your sharp memory, sir.
Thank you.
And we're here now to take stock of what you have been doing over the years, including the base that you have set up here in Gulu and what you have been doing that you would love to share with the country. That said, I also appreciate the fact that you are taking all the SOPs very seriously. You're wearing a mask that is to a large extent obscuring your audibility. And because of how far you are from myself and all these disease-laden people around the table, I would request that you take off your mask and we have this conversation.
Thank you for authorizing me. Youngsters, I'm very... Should I talk?
Please, why not?
Okay, I'm so happy to see you in Gulu. And I'm very excited about the discussion. The advert was that we're going to discuss socio-economic transformation and election security.
True.
So, where do I start from?
Let's start with what is closest to your heart at the moment. In as much as I know security is all you've done, but I think socio-economic transformation is what you have dedicated yourself to do in your later years. Then we'll conclude with the national security with regard to the election.
Very good. So, for me, I'm very excited that you have chosen this venue, Gulu, the 4th Division headquarters, which has a long history in peace building and peace consolidation. This is the headquarters of the 4th Division, which has been involved in both counter-insurgency operations and peace building operations. Where you are seated right now is where the president, after 4 days of hard convincing with the Army Council, decided to re-establish the kingdoms in Uganda. This very place where you are seated in.
Oh, tremendous.
This was also the headquarters of our efforts to support our brothers in South Sudan, which took a long time. Until 20 years ago, this entire area was not, no, until 14 years ago, this area was not productive at all. The whole country was depending on a half of the country. So the choice of sitting here to discuss socio-economic transformation and security is is historic for me, because I was here 1989. You know, I got sacked from Army Command from this
very place.
I got sacked. I was put on Katebe for 5 years, from 89 to 96, and then because of the situation, I was brought back from the Katebe into the counter-insurgency operations, and this is where I originated the idea of civil-military cooperation, because I realized that without the civilian component of government understanding what the military component of the state is doing, there is wasting time. So this is where our first civil-military operation took place under the late Shaban Bantariza with his commissariat, under Kuraije there, under Kayanja, under Rusoke, I think, General Rusoke. That was the first contact with, because we realized that without the civil support, you cannot win the counter-insurgency operations. So for me, that we are seated here to discuss is a very serious opportunity, and I think we should be as honest as possible. I note the absence of the senior gangsters who have been attacking me, so I think I'm lucky because I was prepared for a fight with them, but I don't see it.
I am representing them in every way possible, so General, don't expect it kind of on my end.
No problem. So from 96 to 98, serious operations, we overcame the obstacles, went to the headquarters of the threat. That's the first time UPDF entered into South Sudan. Mwisho 1, Mwisho 2, Mwisho 3, consolidated that situation. Then, because of the good performance I think I had done that time, Mzee chooses to put me as the Minister of State for Defense. Then Parliament refuses me because of my academic qualifications.
Or the absence of academic.
Absence
yes.
of that O-level and A-level.
And A-level.
So, I think out of anger, I choose not to pass through the Kamori. I went direct to S4 again with my daughter Josephine, whom you know very well.
Oh yes, my friend.
So 98, 99, 2000, and I earned myself, I think, a certificate of with very low marks, I think. Why? Because I made a mistake, and I saw the questions that they were setting for me were not relevant to my mind, to my brain power at that time. So for me, what I did was to cancel the UNEB's questions.
And set your own.
I set my own.
And answer them.
Very well. So from that time, we kept on arguing. The historicals in the army, we kept on arguing, gentlemen, if we don't have a perfect understanding of security and development, you are going to get it wrong. At the end of the day, these two must be linked, and linked clearly and firmly understood by the whole nation. So they said, no, you can't get involved until you have finished the counter-insurgency operations. But 2010, 2011, when the walk to work situation started, everybody clearly understood, began to understand the relationship between the two. These people who are walking to work, why is there so much agitation? So we lobbied and lobbied and lobbied until the president gave us space, only space in about 51 sub-counties of the original triangle and other areas in the north, which he allowed us to enter into that development space through NADS. And since then, we have just been evolving. So for me, for today, because after 7 years of this field work, operation, understanding how civil people think, trying to reshape their mentality, today I'm going to use the talking points from the National Planning Authority. And I'm glad NPA is represented by Dr. Suman Gurova here. Those are the talking points I will use as far as the relationship between security and development are concerned. And I will be on your side this time, Kasiate, asking the security chiefs whether they are equal to the task of the emerging situations that are emerging right now. Because the scenario we are seeing today was clearly predicted in the Defense Transformation White Paper. It clearly predicted that 15 years from then, the nation will be faced with about 134 security threats. But only 3 will be military nature. So the CDF will confirm, Kuraije will confirm here that I have kept telling them that the threat right now is not military. The threat to Uganda is livelihoods, is jobs, it is expanding the economy, it is all those things that everybody has been talking about. And that is the basis of my paper. So for me, for this gathering here, for this show, I will be more on the questioning side of them, because they are the ones in charge of defense and security. But during my recent interactions with them, they have completely understood the picture. They have completely understood the picture, and I think they are beginning to shape up towards that challenge. That's why for me in April or May last year, I told them, guys, you go to the ghettos. Stop looking at this situation as if it is a normal situation. Go into the ghettos, go into the industrial parks, go into the rural farming households, so that you understand the bottom line. Because the current challenge you have, socio-economic, it is not political, it is not the physical security. So I'll be using the talking points, because now I'm no longer at NADS. I graduated through NADS, created them into a forum. That's why you have all these EBs here. And we are now at the planning level for National Development Plan 3. This one has redefined the past performances and challenges, and it is predicting a very, very good future in a new approach. That's what I will come to when I reach that level. So for me, I'm so happy that the UPDF is going to be celebrating 40 years of existence. For me, and the civil military cooperation activities, I will be celebrating 25 years. Because my first paper on the subject was written in August and approved by the High Command in August 1996. So you are seated in a historic site. I'm glad you have chosen to sit here. Let us discuss.
General Saleh, thank you very much for that interesting and very insightful historic perspective to the conversations that we have today. And indeed, without a doubt, you have confirmed that I thought you are my guest. Now you want to assume the role of being my co-host. That I welcome.
That would be the perfect setting. I will have a chance for once.
Indeed, and like you have said and commended Capital Radio for broadcasting from Gulu, we are indeed a national station with frequencies covering the entire country. Just to recap our frequencies, we are broadcasting from 96.9 FM in Gulu. We are on 89.4 in Fort Portal, in Mbarara 88.7, Mbale 90.9, and Arua in 92.7. We're also welcoming feedback from our listeners that are scattered across the country and others from without the country, because we are broadcasting off our Facebook channel. Our account is still validated, and so we'll be receiving feedback, questions or comments on our number as follows: 0752 345 913. I repeat, 0752 345 913. That's also to include the country code +256. Andrew Mwenda, the rabble rouser in chief, you've listened carefully to what General Saleh has got to say with regard to the historic context in the conversation we're going to have this morning. One, the socio-economic transformation that he and the government are proud to talk about over the last couple of decades, but also importantly, the relationship with that and the security situation as we witness on a daily, more so coming 5 days before the election. If you were to start by giving a rating on a rate of 0 to 10, I like that scale, where 0 is absolutely nothing done and 10 is an excellent job, where would you rate these efforts and why so?
Well, to ask an old man of 108 to make a rating is unfair. What I can say from the reading of economic history, if you look at the last 35 years, Uganda's economy has grown at an annual average rate of about 7% per year. And Uganda's population has grown at an annual average rate of about 3.3% per year. So the economy of Uganda, which was about 2.3 billion in 1986, is now an economy of 37 billion in 2020. That is phenomenal growth. An annual average rate of growth of 7% is actually unprecedented in the history of economic development. If you read a book called The Coming Convergence by the Nobel laureate in economics called Michael Spence, he studied world economies from 1950 to 2005, looking at what economies could have grown at an annual average rate of 7% per year over 55 years. They were only 13. Why? It is very easy to initiate economic growth. It's very difficult to sustain growth. What the Museveni administration has done is not only initiate growth, but it has placed Uganda on a long-term trajectory of sustained economic growth. Ugandans underestimate that achievement, I realize. Ugandans underestimate that. Now the others say the population has grown. You see, when you are calculating per capita income growth, you get GDP growth minus population growth, then you get per capita income growth.
Would now assume you're listening to a Honorable Semu Junganda. When you drop these economic figures and statistics, which are akin to saying if your head is in the refrigerator and your feet is in an oven, averagely you are warm. A Ugandan who has possibly not been able to take their children to a reasonable school, goes to a health facility in the neighborhood and cannot find drugs, perhaps does not have market at a good price for their produce, and you're telling them of this incredible phenomenal growth over the last 3 decades. There seems to be a disconnect between your rosy figures and the actual reality.
Okay, let me come to that. First, it is very important for us to get the general picture before we come to the specific picture. That even you, Simon,
as co-host, I think we should first understand the structure of the society that we are discussing. Because the children between 0 and 5 are 8.1 million. Between 6 and 12 are 8.3. Between 12 and 17 are 4.3. So the gangsters, I think you discuss it from that perspective. So because I support Kasiate, really, we shouldn't go into the international book writers. Let us face the...
see, I find what is important to first of all understand the general picture. It is very difficult for you to understand the detail before you understand the general picture. That this economy has performed well. It does not mean that everybody has benefited. I'll give you an example. In the United States, the richest man is Jeff Bezos. I think he's worth 184 billion. America is the richest country in the world. But there are many people, I think 53,000 people in California alone are homeless. So it's not possible that Uganda is going to create a society where everybody has been well off. But we can perhaps ask ourselves how many Ugandans are getting better off. But I was coming to that. I just wanted to state the fact for Ugandans to understand that. When we look at China and admire it, there are so many people in China who are destitute. But China is the fastest growing economy in the world. It is rapidly industrializing and structurally transforming from a rural to an urban society, from an agricultural-based economy to an industrial-based economy. So, for me, it matters a lot. And why it is important is that don't underestimate growth, ladies and gentlemen. You know, over the last 100 years, the United States has emerged as the richest economy in the world. They have sustained per capita income growth at only 2%. 2% from 1900 to 2000. And it could have reduced about 1.7 because the growth has significantly reduced. But Uganda has sustained at 3.8%. That's unprecedented. It's one of the best performing economies. Right now, I wrote to the IMF before last week, and they sent me data, global data. Over the last 35 years, Uganda has been the 13th fastest growing economy in the world. Remember, this is a country that is in a very bad neighborhood. You have a collapsed state in South Sudan. You have an absentee state in Eastern DRC. And for many years, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda were not growing when Uganda was growing. So if you get the average of 34 years, and this country is also 1,500 kilometers away from the coast. So Uganda has many problems that should actually have predicted failure. And the fact that we succeeded the way we did would not have been predicted. There is a speech I think Lee Kuan Yew, the former Prime Minister of Singapore, gave in 1988. He said, Uganda cannot be reconstructed even in the next 100 years. He was a very intelligent man who was able to see that. So we should appreciate what we have achieved. That's why. Now, let me come to what General Saleh was saying.
Right before you get it.
Please.
Andrew, this is the capital gang. It's not a speech by Lee Kuan Yew.
You asked me a question. I want to answer it. Here are numbers from Uganda National Bureau of Statistics. In 1991, houses whose walls were built out of permanent materials were only 12%. In 2014, they had reached 45%. So we can say Ugandans in 1991 who were living in mud houses were 12%. By 2014, now we are in 2020, so we don't have the data for that. There were 45% of Ugandans were living in houses whose walls were made of permanent materials. Roofs built out of permanent materials were 40% in 1991. In 2014, they were 70%. The percentage of Ugandans who lived in houses with rammed earth floor, you have just mud or cow dung, was 74.4% in 2002. In 2014, it had reached 32.4%. So it is not true that Uganda's growth has not benefited the wider society. Whether you look at education, health, Uganda's life expectancy was 39 years in 1999. Today, it is 65. By the way, I'm giving you a number of 2014. It could even be 68. You say Uganda has bad health. If we have had bad health, what is the most important indicator of health? It is life expectancy, that people can live longer and healthier. So you can talk about all these abstract things. Let me give you another number, by the way. It's not true that the absence of medicines is as prevalent as it was. If you look at Ministry of Health figures, absence of the 6 most essential drugs, since you don't want me to give a speech, I will not list them, the 6 most essential drugs. About 10 years ago, you had a 44% absence rate. Right now, we have 100% presence of the 6 most essential drugs in every government health facility across the country. And that is why life expectancy is going up. So this idea of Ugandans drumming this doomsday story that this country is falling apart, things have, is not true. Whether you look at roads, whether you look at even schools, classrooms, health centers, things have been built.
Thank you very much.
But that doesn't mean there are not many gaps that Uganda needs to fill. To discuss the future of Uganda, we need to say, where are we? If we know where we are, we can say, where do we want to go? My disagreement with a lot of Ugandan elites is to say we should not discuss where we are. We should discuss where we are going. How can you begin to go?
No, they actually say we should discuss where we should have been.
So you told me that one head
the understanding is
you have said one head is in the oven, another is in the freezer. But they have shown you that the quality of living measured, by the way, I can also give you numbers on the number of televisions in Uganda, the number of families that have cars, motorcycles, radios, sofa sets. All these are things that improve the quality of life. In any case, a quality of life is also about choice. In 30 years ago, we had the choice of one radio station, one television station. Now we have the choice of 300 radio stations. We had the choice of one cereal. Now you can enter supermarket and find 20 brands of cereal.
Now I need the help of my co-host to stop this man. You know he's unstoppable.
I don't want you.
You can't stop him because I normally try to stop him, but look, for me I thought today really we should focus on, we are in the political stage of our national development. We should focus on local issues that really affect us.
But also for you to stop him effectively, General, you will have to get closer to your microphone. Your levels are not as...
Why? Okay.
No, Afande's voice is not a technological advance to deal with electronic engineering.
I was last on the Capital Gang, I think like 98. So, am I audible now?
Now you are very audible. General Saleh, Andrew has raised very important perspectives, but also importantly, he underscores one fact, that there has been progress. The arguments we receive and the acrimony that you receive on this side is because many think and believe that we should be better than where we are. They acknowledge that we have had some progress, but we should be in a better place. Why aren't we in that better place? Why are we, yes, progressed, but not where we should have been? Well, nobody even knows where we should have been, but they believe we should be in a better place.
Yeah, that's why the president has been asking. Recently, I provoked him into discussing the National Development Plan 3. Then he told me in a formal letter that whoever wants to discuss Uganda's economy should study what were the factors of production in Uganda in 1900, at the onset of colonialism. What were the factors of production in 1962, when we gained independence? How were the factors of production in 1986, when we came to power? How are the factors of production now, 2020, and where do we want them to be the next phase? Because you have ignored to discuss those factors of production. And if you don't discuss factors of production in economics, then you are losing the whole point. Now, all of us know the factors of production as they are enumerated. They are expanding on a daily basis, but at least we know of the basic 5. Land, labor, entrepreneurship,
and then capital.
Markets,
Capital.
Knowledge, capital.
Yeah.
Now, how are those factors of production today? That should be really, that's in my opinion, if we want to discuss the future, we need to discuss, that's what he told me. You go, because I was trying to show him that NDP3 is the best document so far, because it has summarized our past, present, and those figures are there, and Dr. Suman can project them for you. So I wanted him to be clear to us, but he told me, if you don't study these factors of production and relate them to how they should be arranged in order to create wealth, all of you are missing the point. So what is the problem with the issue of land? Number 2, the biggest challenge I think we have is the issue of labor. How do you deploy labor and you reward it? Number 3 is the capital. How is capital formed? How is it deployed? How is it multiplied? The 4th one is technology, which we are beginning to acquire off shelf, although we are not participating in constructing that technology. Then the issue of markets. If you don't have clarity on the issue of markets, you cannot discuss wealth creation. So I thought we would dedicate this important show to those real factors of production, and then we discuss them squarely.
Let us imagine a gentleman called Odonkara living in a village called Bungatira, not very far away from here in Gulu, who indeed at 1986 had a mud and water house grass thatched, had his 4 children, not quite going to school. Then the insurgency comes through, 2 of them are abducted. Perhaps, the situation goes as bad as it is. Today, he's in the state of recovery. He possibly now has, can we therefore imagine or even assume that today he has a Mabati house? Can we assume that his last born perhaps in 1987 is now, in gainful employment, providing the labor that you talk about, but skilled labor, not unskilled labor? That is the person we want to look at.
If these factors are taken into consideration, Northern Uganda is going to be the fastest growing region in the whole country.
Is going to be, or?
It's going to be for sure. Because if you look at the statistics 10 years ago, it had the highest rate of poverty
per capita.
It has reduced tremendously. You can get the statistics from the Ministry of Northern Uganda. Why? Because during the insurgency, government had an option of not funding it at all because they were under insurgency. But the government took the right direction and said, even if there is insurgency in the north, let us keep it funded. Between 94 and 2020, only livelihood projects in northern Uganda took 3.902 trillion in livelihood projects. Now, NUSAF 1, NUSAF 2, NUSAF 3,
Kalip and other places.
PRDP 1, you know them, Kasiat, you know them very well.
Yes.
To date, between 94, when the first project was launched, and today, 3.902 trillion spent. Now, that's why they are thinking in a new format. That's why we are here. We are discussing with them seriously. When is the livelihood projects going to stop so that we discuss investments?
True that. Now, General Saleh.
Now, the advantage of this place is that the population density on land is the smallest, I think, in the whole country. Here, per capita acreage of land in the Gulu district alone is 10 acres per person.
Wow.
In Kasese, it is 350 people per square kilometer. So the hope that is now emerging in the north, you are going to witness it, because the land, I think, has gone down to 22%. I think you can get the statistics. So but that is out of peace. The moment peace comes, everybody will wake up, and you can see for yourselves. If you go to Moya now, if you go to Amur, if you go to Agolo in Kitugum, commercial farming is beginning to take shape. So we are very hopeful. So when such a question comes, we can answer it directly.
And talking about answering all the questions, in this room, General Saleh, who is my co-host, has assembled a formidable team of government technocrats and all the others. I will put them in no particular order, but I would want to introduce them to our listeners. Just joining us is the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi. Good morning, welcome to the program. We also have the Assistant Inspector General of Police, Andrew Sorowen, who is with us in this room. We've got Brigadier Felix Kulaije, the Member of Parliament representing the UPDF in Parliament, but also holds other portfolio, and he will be introducing himself later on the program. We have Brigadier General Flavia Biekwaso, the spokesperson of the UPDF and Ministry of Defense. We've got Emmanuel Iyamulemye, the Executive Director of the Uganda Coffee Development Agency. We have got Engineer John Mujumi, the Executive Director of the Microfinance Support Center. We've got Petronella Masika, Acting CEO of I'll get it very right here. I think it's written very poorly on my sheet of paper. I've got Joan Mutiwa, who is the Acting Executive Director of the Rural Electrification Agency. Dr. Suman Guloba, National Planning Authority, you have been mentioned earlier on the program. So is Engineer Johnson Amayo, Deputy Managing Director, National Water and Sewage Corporation. We've got Esther Musoke and Erika Mgisha, who is the Executive Director of the Uganda Exports Promotions Board. So with me here, I have a formidable team of people that will be answering the questions as will be posed by myself and my co-host. As we discuss socio-economic transformation in light of the security situation in the country, we are taking these conversations more like, an arm and leg in terms of working in tandem. And now that the CDF has just joined us, as we allow him to catch his breath, I also wish to inform him that we are 5 days to the next election, and the country is eagerly waiting on how the aftermath of the election, the during of the election, and now these 5 days before the election will be in terms of pacifying of course, the external boundaries. And from the Deputy Inspector General of Police, the country is also eagerly waiting to hear what it is that you're going to do in terms of protecting and serving every citizen in equal measure. That said, Ofono Pondo, as a regular gangster, I wish to invite you at this point in time to react to what General Saleh did mention in terms of socio-economic transformation and that linkage that he put with regard to civil-military cooperation and the pacification of a country vis-a-vis its development. And that will take us for some 5 minutes before we call for the first break.
Well,
then get
first of
into
all,
the
there's no material contradiction between what General Saleh is saying and what Andrew Mwende is saying. There is a general trajectory of development. Structural transformation is taking place in the country. Like what I said, when you look at education, you look at there's a general structural transformation going on, and that has been sustained over a period of time. And now we need to begin paying attention to specific obstacles to our transformation agenda. One of which General Saleh has talked about, factors of production. There are places in Uganda where agriculture can no longer be productive, viable, in a commercial, profitable sense. In that respect, what do we do to those that, since God created earth, they have been living on agriculture? What do we do to transform them out of agriculture into other fields that can earn them a living, earn them prosperity? So that's the discussion we should be in. And part of that discussion is what government is providing. One, general universal education, just awareness, and eventually we go into skills development acquisition. The second one is universal health. Like Andrew Mwende said, if you look at all the indicators in health, there is progress. Infant mortality, maternal mortality, life expectancy, disease burden. The third area is what General Saleh is doing now, Operation Wealth Creation, which was meant and is still meant to tackle, to support the 68% of Ugandans who have been outside the commercial money economy. What was it supposed to do? First of all, to ensure that they produce sufficiently to feed their family, food security. Two, produce surplus for the market. If you look at Uganda today, there is nothing that somebody produces that cannot be sold. 30 years ago, nobody knew that you can put millet as a commercial crop. If you travel in this part of northern Uganda, Chole, Lango, and Teso, millet today is a commercial crop. 30 years ago, nobody knew that cassava can be turned into money. Today, you can actually cut grass by the roadside and sell grass to people who are doing zero grazing. Today, you can collect cow dung, you can collect chicken dung, and actually sell. You can make that as a specialty, and you collect chicken dung, you collect goat dung, you collect cow dung, and sell. So that is opening the eyes of Ugandans on commercialization of activities. The fourth area is maintenance of continuous peace, stability, and tranquility. Because without that, you can hardly do anything. And so that general transformation should now go into specific areas. Ugandans who have got education, you have raised their expectation. Unfortunately, the education, by and large, still does not equip us with the requisite skill for our economy. And so you have people who have education, they think that by earning a degree in Uganda, earning a degree in Runyoro, earning a degree in Acholi, you should be entitled to a job. But what job if you have studied a religion, unless you're going to be a priest?
Or an interpreter at The Hague.
Yeah, so it is something that we need to have a deep, sustained discussion. Unfortunately, with the elite, with the political class, that is not our area of discussion. I also want to conclude by disabusing, because you asked that there are Ugandans who are saying we are not where we are supposed to be. Those Ugandans who are talking so, they are talking about things that don't match, because they say, oh, you say Singapore. But what is the education of Singapore? What is the societal discipline in Singapore? Is Uganda any different, materially different from the other African countries that have been stable for the last 40 years, last 50 years? Is Uganda materially different? Is Tanzania, for example, materially different from Uganda? And so when people say, where are we supposed to be?
In my opinion,
yes,
I think let's ask a straightforward question. What is the level of unemployment? That's all.
Yeah.
What is the level of unemployment? What type of unemployment do we have? How can we create? Let us, I think, because for me, I'm going to walk out of your studios, because this is not a show. This is a serious discussion. So if you are saying unemployment, be specific and say, what is the level of unemployment? And then, how do we create, how do we mitigate, how do we change that? I wish we could focus on specifics, and then we see. Because for me, I've told you already, this class from 0 to 17 equals 20.7 million children. These are people who are consumers, they are not working, they are in school. So if you have a society that is structured that way, so what is the working group is between 18 and 35. How many are they? What are they trained in? Or what can we train them in order to absorb that huge labor that is available? Let us be specific. Thank you, co-host, if you take it.
No, I am in total agreement with you.
There's no contradiction between what we are saying and what I'm saying. Because currently, the dominant feature, the dominant characteristics of Uganda are two. One, people with either no education or little education with no skill. Consequently, the dominant employment is in the rural agricultural subsector.
No, facts are going to show us that actually that's a misconception. We are working on a study that is about to show us that, as you said, the elites are misconceiving the whole situation. Because we shouldn't, I think, you see, that's where we get the facts wrong. So let us be specific. What is the unemployment rate? Why are people not employed? So that we get straightforward answers from experts.
I think, General Saleh, since you gathered a panel of experts here, may I at this point in time invite Dr. Suman Glover to take to the dais so that then he can answer these very specific questions, so that we redeem my gangster colleague Ofono Pondo from taking the heat from you as my co-host. Then he will return after Glover has taken it.
I'm absorbing.
Proper discussion.
Yeah, Dr. Glover, the question has been posed. We talk about unemployment, but what is that rate of unemployment? And some in fact even argue that it's not unemployment, it is unemployability. That we may have the skills, but we lack the attitudes and work ethic to actually produce. So where do we stand from the National Planning Authority perspective in terms of what is on the ground and what interventions have you prescribed to government to put in place to ensure that that terrible trajectory is reversed?
Thank you, Simon. To be more clearer, I think Uganda's problem is not that of unemployment. It's an issue of underemployment. This because you find that the majority of Ugandans, particularly the poor, cannot afford not to be employed. The reason is that for a poor person, if it means tilling land, washing a car, whatever they are doing, they will try to do in order to survive. But the challenge that we have, that those who are in employment are earning well little. You get, for instance, in agriculture, majority of agriculture is smallholder agriculture, and this is where most of the people are. And when I talk about smallholder, you find that this, on average, these people own about 1.3 acres of land, a household of about 5 to 6 people. And all of them, if they decide to work on this land, it takes them just about 3 hours for them to be able to use this land. Meaning that while they are employed on that piece of land, when they work on that land, they will spend the rest of, in a month, they will be able to work just for a day. So, and then the rest of the time, they have nothing to do.
That is
so
the
when you are
as
trying
it prevails. How do we mitigate it?
Now, the way I'm trying to mitigate it, and this is coming from the development angle, National Planning Authority, because we have been systematic and strategic. In the planning cycle, we started by sorting out the foundation. And the foundation here, starting from what General said, security is key. Stability in terms of macroeconomic stability was key. So in NDP1 and NDP2, these things have been able to be sorted out. The third thing that we have been able to sort out is issue of infrastructure. If you, in 2008, you couldn't talk about an industry because of road shedding. Now, because you have been able to sort out the issue of electricity, you have surplus. Now you have another problem of trying to plan for that surplus. The other issue that we're able to sort out the foundation is the issue of roads. Now you can move from one place of Uganda to the other by road, and you're able to evacuate whatever you produce to the market. Now, the focus now we are moving NDP3 is to recognize that even with this foundation set, the issues of unemployment affecting majority of Ugandans, and particularly the youth. And these youth, if you are to sort them out, we need now to move to the other level of trying to plan for them by creating jobs particularly in industry. Industrialization agenda is now coming in, and now is the time that we can talk about industrialization agenda, because you have sorted out the underlying foundation where industry can be able to succeed.
Tremendous.
And
now, some may also say that just beyond holding all of us to work in factories, perhaps you also need to create some financing for those that have entrepreneurial skills to start their own enterprises. And that's where now the microfinance support center people will also come and share with us what they are doing in that regard, because we have prohibitively high interest rates that cannot provide financing for young people.
But Simon, just to go back, General Saleh asked an important question that we must identify what is the level of unemployment. I just want to hear that number. Of the working population of Uganda, or those who are out of school, how many are unemployed, how many are underemployed, and how many are gainfully employed? At least give us that number so that we know.
Okay, in terms of, it's not a specific number, because as I told you from the beginning, is that when you look for the exact number to tell you, from the UBO statistics, it will tell you that the majority of Ugandans are employed, because our unemployment rate stands around 5 to 6%. But majority of those, the ones in informal sector, you'll get that the ones in informal sector, they're the ones who are gainfully employed. Out of those employed, it's just 20% in the informal sector. Those are the ones who are mainly getting gainful employment. Then when you look at it, majority of those are either, for the youth, majority of them are actually not in agriculture employment. They are more in the service employment, the borders and the borders. Then you get the service.
So do you think a person riding a border is underemployed?
No, actually, he's better than somebody in agriculture, because that's why they're shifting away from agriculture.
From the statistics that we have, it's about we have about 8 million jobs, I think. But 2.5 are in agriculture, but the biggest majority is in services, in creative arts, culture and creative arts. The services, I think, is about 1.8 or 2.8. So the jobs that are there is about 8 million jobs from the statistics that we have. But the challenge there is that almost 80% are in the informal sector. They are not quantified. They are not very well managed. I think he can get you the statistics. You just got him in an ambush now.
Yes, I have the statistics with me on my phone as I will come in later, because we have done a presentation analysis on this. So the statistics will be able to come out. But to add on what Jen is saying, is that when you look at those employed in agriculture, initially we had thought the analysis that Jen is talking about had showed that actually majority of the youth were in agriculture, but the average age of people in agriculture is actually 46 years. And meaning that the rest of those who are not what actually in the services where the youth are. And if you are to make that gainful employment, it means that you need to unpack, if you are really talking about the youth, you need to unpack what they are doing in agriculture, and you give them an alternative. Then those who are in the services, you give them an alternative, because we were having this conversation yesterday. You find that those in agriculture, particularly the smallholder people in agriculture, that's where the biggest problem is that they have very little land, except for northern Uganda, the way Jeno did allude to. So because of that, they have most of the time where they have nothing to do. So to help them, you need to sort out issues of productivity on that small farmland in terms of inputs they are getting, in terms of extension. But beyond that, since the farm holding is very small, it can employ just one person in the family. So the rest of the people, you need to give them another alternative. And this is where the issue of industry comes in, the issue of services come in, and then you're able to unpack that. And the way Kasiate did put it, because if you are starting to talk to this, then issues of cottage, issues of skilling them for cottage industry. So that one, if you do that, the capital issue becomes key, because these people, the challenge that we have seen is that the nature of capital around is very expensive to be able to nurture a cottage industry. So here the UDB microfinance support center, and even things we are talking about here, Emioga, become very key in making sure we sustain that, that produce the jobs. And that's the conversation we need to talk to, particularly for me, how are we preparing ourselves going forward to sort out this challenge that we are facing
now. Simon, Andrew, just before General Saleh storms out of here, and yet I still need him because
3 Capital FM.
I want to come to issue. I do not think that even if you created the jobs.
91.3 Capital FM. Capital Gang coming to you live from Gulu on our frequency of 96.9 FM, and of course broadcasting across the country on 89.4 in Fort Portal, Mara 88.7, Mbali 90.9, Arua 92.7. My name is Simon Kasiate, the host of the program this morning. My co-host is General Caleb Akandwanaho, also known as Salim Saleh. He is the Chief Coordinator of Operation Wealth Creation and also Presidential Advisor for Defense. He's given us a historic perspective of the location where we're having this conversation this morning that set this conversation in situ. Around the table, the regular gangsters of Ono Opondo, the Executive Director of the National Media Center, but we have guests with us on the program this morning. A cachet of them, all experts under the sun, have been assembled by my co-host who's doing a tremendous job. Andrew Mwenda is considered the rabble-rouser in chief. He has other names and titles he gives himself, but that's what he is today for the sake of our conversation. Around the table, we have the top security chiefs, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Mohozi, also here to share with us insights into the role of the UPDF in safeguarding our territorial integrity, especially so as we get down to a critical election in 5 days. We also have the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Andrew Sorowen, who is also here to give us the assurance that his forces are in charge of the security situation before, during, and after the elections, or perhaps even maybe tell us that there is no threat for us to worry about. But around the table, we have got very many experts in different areas of expertise, including leaders in their respective capacities of key government agencies that we will be forming the core conversation around the twin topics that we are discussing this morning, which is socio-economic transformation as it is at the moment, but also the nexus between that and the growth development of our country in the bigger ambit of security. Just before we went in for a break, General Saleh, who's my co-host, did challenge us to answer the specific questions and give reassurance to especially the majority of young people listening to this program. There's been the cry and hue of unemployment. And we are here throwing figures, projections, and statistics that sound so rosy, perhaps even utopian. Some may exaggerate. But he wants to know specifically what is the rate of unemployment? What is the nature of unemployment? And having known that in specific terms, what is the intervention to get these millions of young people that at the moment are consuming and not producing out of the abyss of poverty? Dr. Asman Globa of the National Planning Authority, you are on the dice, and I will start with you for 5 minutes so that you again put us back into the context of our conversation.
To answer the question directly of unemployment, the official statistics state that the unemployment rate is 9%. But we need, when you unpack the statistics a little bit more, you find that this includes people who are volunteering, it includes people who are unpaid, working in family farms and units. So when you remove that, the actual unemployment rate is actually 38%.
Unpack it further, the devil is in the detail. When you say someone working in a family enterprise is not in proper employment, yet in our view, some may be earning impacts from it. And Andrew gave an example where we were off air. If my wife is operating a Kaduka, which is my little enterprise, a shop, I may not necessarily pay her a salary, but she has a meal there.
No, the salary may not be structured that at the end of the month she receives 1 million shillings. But at the end of the month, from the proceeds of the shop, the benefits she gets, which is housing, clothing, meals, transport, her perfume and all this, may exceed 1 million. And you need to capture that sense, that reality of Uganda and how it is. You can't say that person is not gainfully employed simply because they do not have a structured salary.
That one is very clear, but beyond that, person is structured, because the question that we ask at UBOS when we are calculating the unemployment number, it asks how many hours do you work within a week. Mm-hmm. It doesn't ask how much do you earn from that amount of labor. So you get somebody who told...
Sort of all that, I think people are not... Because the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development has studied the subject extensively. Mm. If you get PS Kivenge, he will tell you that he needs 4.5 trillion shillings. At least I saw one cabinet paper talking about 4.5 trillion shillings in order to create enough jobs for all the youth. They have studied the structure of the youth, the structure of unemployment, so we could get him to give you a proper, because the subject has been overstudied and it has been quantified.
But I find that money, they get it to do it with what? How do money does not create jobs? Ideas create jobs.
It's a full proposal.
And the package I want to talk to in details with what Jen is saying is that one, if you go a bit further in those details, if you give me a bit more time, is that when you talk about gainful employment, it's only 2 out of 10 Ugandans who are actually paid gainful employment. So meaning because you unpacking that employment characteristics a little bit further. So when you start looking at the youth, it also goes a bit further. It tells you where exactly they are, and in some areas where they are earning well less compared to others. One, the ones who are in the agriculture sector are earning about 90,000 per month, compared to those who are in manufacturing and other sectors, meaning they are earning well little to even sustain them. So these characteristics are the ones that inform the issue that Jen is talking about, the issue of the nexus between development and security.
That said, Dr. Grover,
but I think from an economic perspective, even that is not accurate. Let me give you an example. If a person is working in manufacturing, hold a second, Kasiate, this is an economic subject. If a person is working in a manufacturing sector, most likely that person lives in an urban area, lives in a rented house, and incurs the cost of transport to go and work, and has to pay for electricity, for water, for things like that. A person who works in agriculture lives in their own house, walks to work to their garden, and there are many other costs that are removed. What you are looking at is a monetary wage, not the real wage, because the real wage is the basket who has to rent, has to pay for electricity, has to buy even water in the village, they collect it from the well, who has to feed from one who feeds from his garden, the other guy feeds from a market. So you will find that the earning, that 90,000 may be more than 300,000 you earn in a manufacturing job. Because in manufacturing job, you have so many other attendant costs. You see, I have looked at these statistics and I have been talking to the guys at UBOS. A lot of Ugandan statistics does not address the reality of Uganda. They go to a village and ask somebody, said, how many meals do you have a day? The guy say 1. With the same UBOS guys, I ask the same person, did you eat roasted casserole in the morning? Okay, did you, when you are cultivating in your garden, did you roast the sweet potatoes and eat them? And you realize this guy has had maybe 6-7 meals a day, the way people in the village eat. He picks his mango and eats, he roasts casserole on the garden and eats, he roasts cassava. Because if you say, how many meals do you have, they mean when they cook and sit as a family to eat. That's what they mean by a meal. But what you're trying to understand about the livelihood of this person is how many times do they eat. Sometimes they eat 4 times. So it is not true that a person in manufacturing necessarily earns more than a person in agriculture because of the different ways in which they live and the different costs and cost structures they face.
Andrew, granted, and that also forms the greater ideation in terms of perceptions of jobs and where they are. And indeed, that's why we are where we are. That many young people have since migrated from villages, looking for greener pastures in cities and urban centers, with the hope that what they get there in terms of factory jobs and other parks like border riding will provide them a better livelihood than where they are coming from. And what do we face, therefore? We face a situation like what Sorweni is going to describe.
Children in schools, nurses schools, even UPDF. This uniform, is it made in Uganda? You ask the CDF. It's very likely that it was imported from China. This is the challenge of NRM is facing. That if you want to create jobs in this country, we have raw materials we can convert into finished products. Please remember, an economy develops by improving what it produces. If you produce cotton, you earn 2% of the international market price. If you make clothes, you earn about 17%. If you market high fashion, Louis Vuitton or Dolce and Gabbana, you earn 60%. The process of development is the process of upgrading yourself from producing unprocessed products and selling them to processed products, then to high quality products. The discussion here should be, where do we begin from? Kapeka is one example. Yes, we have been having raw material in Uganda, but we have not been making tiles. Now, 95% of the raw material that makes tiles in Uganda, including the tiles in this house, are made in Kapeka. How do we ensure that coffee, cotton...
Andrew, that is precisely what NDP3 is all about. It is a very elaborate plan to change the country.
Afand, are we going to implement it? We normally write good plans. We don't implement them.
We have tried to project it because I'm working under them now. But people are not ready to discuss issues. People are just ready to discuss emotions.
That's true.
So how would we discuss issues and not emotions? Because if anybody understands what we have gone through to construct this NDP3, it's a total solution, but it is not understood by many people. Because if you could go and if you cannot be 5 minutes be elaborate what is NDP3, what are its objectives, what are its strategies, what are the programs?
NDP3, basically it starts from understanding where we're coming from as a country and where we need to go as a country. And because of that, the issue that we are talking about today, the main goal of NDP3 is to improve household incomes and welfare of people. And how is this going to be done is through industrialization. And because of from industrialization, it goes on to dwell to talk about 5 objectives that are around the value addition. And when I talk about industrialization, this is resource-based industrialization based on the resources we have. And mainly these are two or three resources. First is labor that we have abundant labor. Second, we have good rains. Then we have the minerals and that we need to, and agriculture
and the factors of soils.
And the factors of soil. Now the first objective is basically to harness those resources in terms of value addition. The second, unlike all the plans that we have had, the first plan that we are specifically beyond what we are doing is targeting the private sector. Because the private sector, as you are aware, it employs 80% of all Ugandans, both in the formal sector. It pays 80% of the taxes, and it is, in terms of pension and capital, it's the biggest driver in terms of investment. So we are trying to harness that private sector to be able to drive this economy and deliver the jobs. The third objective related to NDP3 is related now to human capital, trying to unpack human capital issues related to health and education to have a productive labor force, because the only labor you'll be able to use that one that's not safe.
So discuss for us in NDP3 your industrial
Andrew, please allow me moderate this.
I'm coming to that.
The only disruption I will take is from my co-host, who's General Saleh.
Now, I'm so happy that you have admitted. You know, I have discovered a job for myself now. So let me help him, because I don't, and this is the problem. Andrew clearly stated something which we are trying to use illustrations. You see, there is NRM government, where Gorova belongs, and then NRMO, the organization. The disconnection between these two is the one that is causing the anxiety in the public.
Yes.
Because the NRMG development. Number 5, number 6, climate change and how to mitigate it. It's a program. Then public sector transformation, development plan implementation, because other plans, most of them did not have fully-fledged implementation plans after they were made. Then sustainable urbanization and housing. It's a program. Then private sector development, it's a program. Digital transformation, it's a program. Tourism development, it's a program. Community mobilization and mindset change is a program under NDP3. Sustainable development of petroleum resources, it's a program. Innovation, technology development, and transfer. It's a program with a budget. Then manufacturing is a program. Mineral development is a program. These are 18 programs under NDP3 that have not been publicized to the public. That's why there is confusion about information, and this one rests with them squarely. So, as a co-host, for us, we are really worried about whether the security forces are ready to, for the development, from the development perspective. I can assure the audience and the participants of this show that we are on the right path. But it is being disrupted by now the emotions that are like one of the emotions, for instance, is the conspiracy theories that are existing in the public, which all of you are aware, but you are not discussing. That all the wealth, for instance, of Uganda has been taken by the Kaguta family. It's a widely held opinion. So I was searching on the net. Somebody sent me a very funny. I'll remove the thing from my. The encroaching on the space. I was looking at this conspiracy theory, which is there, that there is a dynasty of people who are controlling the entire world. And I wanted to share with the gangsters. You just look at it. It is on the internet, being projected by Mr. Dr. Kiyinji, I think from somewhere, from Australia. If you look at the content of this publication, it is asking for people to commit genocide against another group. That is number one. Now, that misinformation is existing in a hot period like this. That's why people are saying, the youth are saying, we are going to look for Land Cruisers. We are going to look for, so it becomes, you change the whole meaning of a whole nation into a speculation. And it is on the website of all the platforms, Ugandan Arts, Manya, whatever, but it is total misinformation. Number two is that everybody has finished, the Kaguta family has finished all the land in Uganda. It belongs to them. So nobody reacts to that. And that's where we are getting lost completely. So also I have data for you, because that is my black book. That one there, you can film there. You remove, I don't know whose things are those. That is my black book on land grabbers. I had sought to Semuju would be in the studio. I wanted to hand it over to him.
I will pass it on to him.
Now I'm passing it on to the Law Reform Commission so that they can create a law that can protect people from this mood of, we are not facing the issue squarely. Ethnicity has again resurfaced, and it is a national security threat. The cyber front, that yes, it is because the hate speeches which are on the airwaves of Uganda today, you can imagine that the whole nation is going to collapse tomorrow. So, if you allow, for me, I think all our hopes on socio-economic development should be on NDP3. Give him as many questions as possible, because the program is clear, it is costed, it is underway. Now, the security side are the ones really to assure us from the perspective that the challenges that they are looking at. Because for the last 1 year, they have experienced it. The CDF knows. I have not interacted closely with the police, that we told them that the biggest challenge is the emotions of those young people down there. If you don't go to the bottom and meet them and engage them, you are sitting on a time bomb. And I thought that's what, after this phase of the moderation, this is my opinion as a co-host, you round up with serious questions towards the NDP3, because it is our major document. You can't change it. Because once it has been passed by cabinet, It has been passed by the caucus, and it was passed by Parliament. It's a living document which can give the nation hope, and you give it more attention. So the other side of the security is now in their hands, Mr. Co-host.
Thank you very much, Mr. Host, General Saleh, and indeed you set the stage into very good perspective. You did mention that what we are facing today, the anxiety and all this is as a result of a mismatch between the NRM government and the NRM organization in articulating especially the dictates of the National Development Plan 3. And that's now where we come into political security for that. Like General Saleh has indeed mentioned, there is quite a lot of agitation going on, especially so at this particular time, 5 days before the election, but has been going on for a couple of months ahead of the election. He has given cases in point, some of which I'm sure all of us around the table may have feared to even mention. And we are glad that you have picked up these sentiments on the internet and other places where indeed the Kaguta family is accused of many things, including and not limited to what you've mentioned.
You read what is here, it is shocking, you see? Like all sublime, all operational waste creation, dynasty, the Bahima pension dynasty.
Well, we will get into the details of that after reading the report, but I will put it now to Andrew Sorowen, who is the Assistant Inspector General of Police. We have seen you in action, but we also have seen you issue warnings, directives, and everything else, but also give us assurances on how the country is going to deal with regard to it being safeguarded from the chaos and anxiety that seems to be building up in the run-up to the election. Where do we stand, Sorowen?
Thank you for inviting the police to Kartogang. And I would like to start straight away by saying that the police derives its powers. You can call them the obligations from Article 212 of the Constitution of Uganda. And I will just take 3 obligations. One is to protect life and property of all Ugandans. 2, enforce the laws enacted by Parliament and other regulations like, for example, Minister of Health and COVID. Number 3 is to cooperate with other security agencies in the provision of security in this country. You can name them the UPDF, the prisons, the intelligence, etc. In that the police will not say, I am the one to provide security in this country. The Constitution is very clear, also in the Article 212, that we are supposed to work hand in hand with other security forces, because police may not cover the whole country. So I would like to assure Ugandans that we are aware that when we go to elections, things change. A lot of emotions come in, as General says. Even those who don't understand it come up and want to be heard. However, we are handling the situation case by case. We have support from some members of public, others, of course, defiant, but the majority is with us. Of course, why am I talking about the public? They are so important that they give the volunteer information, which is very, very, very vital in our operations. Because without information, you cannot do anything. Now, elections, as I say, moods change. But we try to handle the situation. Now, in elections, there are 3 periods: the pre-election, the election time, and the post-election. So we planned for all that as security forces to ensure that elections are a success, and after elections, the situation normalizes. Because it is really our obligation, and I would like to assure the country that we are handling the situation effectively. Much as there are few cases of ABCD trying to create the situation to look so bad, we shall, I'm sure, we have identified who is doing ABCD, and we are on top of it. Only to warn those who intend to cause violence that we shall handle them firmly, and the law is very clear. Now, leaders propagate this violence. Some leaders propagate violence. If you give a young man warrant and told him to go and do ABCD, for example, tell him to go and ban Bank of Uganda, he may not know why Bank of Uganda is so important to our economy. Somebody will opt to ban it. So when you see us in action trying to go proactive, it means we are trying to prevent the situation to go out of hand.
Are you therefore suggesting, Mr. Saleh, that you have intercepted such cases where intoxicated young people are acting on the whims of other politicians to cause as much mayhem as is just indicated?
We are doing really our work, and as I told you, public is volunteering information to us, and we are acting with real information, not just pop. And we have done a lot, and we are on top of the situation.
Others also will argue that in doing what is now regarded as good work in your view, and you're on top of the situation, others say you are on top of trampling of the basic human rights of many citizens who are in exercising their right to show discontent against the government, discontent against the way they are being governed, and that they need to be listened to rather than clobbered and bludgeoned as you seem to be doing on the streets.
I would like to mention this. If a police officer stops you, say a traffic officer on the road says stop, or me, I'm facing a riotous crowd, and I'm saying please stop this. If we came to that level of saying stop, stop, there would be no chaos. But people want to show the other side that we are brutal. Whereas it would have been just say a police officer dressed in uniform says please stop what they are doing. You are banning the road, you are destroying our roads which you have worked for. Stop it. The answer is different. Stones held on you and the rest. So whatever comes out, now that I'm defending myself, are some of the issues which come up. But nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I am going to beat civilians left and right, really. So we still lack, as General said, we need to look at these youth and tell them that this is your country. By the way, it is Uganda, for us who have traveled, one of the best countries in the world. But Ugandans don't understand it.
Right over there, Mr. Saleh, you did mention something that's akin to what General Saleh mentioned at the beginning. But right here in Gulu, you realize the guns and sub-rotary may not return peace and development into this place, but rather the engagement of the civilians into what he termed as civil-military cooperation. You as the police seem to be on the reactive side, but you did mention the need to engage the civilians and those that seem to be on the other side of creating a mayhem. Are you doing that? If so, to what extent are you succeeding? You seem to have put your hands in the air in surrender.
No. Let's put it clear. We are both proactive and reactive. When a situation slips through your hands, you become reactive. But a bigger percentage is proactive. We have a problem for the youth, really. Because I'm a part of a young group, called Youth Power Uganda. It is fighting drugs. I'm very part of. We intended to have a match in April 4th, but COVID blocked it. Professor Nawango had given us Makerere University to start. Because I found it that if we don't go to that side, this issue of youth joining panel groups of drugs is going to overwhelm us. So that's what the proactiveness we are going for. then whatever happens and slips through your hands becomes reactive. Of course, we go. But we would have lost marks on that one because it should be preventive more than reactive.
True that. And I will now turn my guns literally and in every sense of the word to the Chief of Defense Forces, General, which we know that the Constitution the Constitution of Uganda bestowed on the UPDF the role of protecting our territorial integrity. We also just heard Dr. Owen say that among the mandates provided for and in our Constitution is to ensure that one will protect lives and property responsible enacted by the respective agencies, but also cooperate with other security services. And you are one of them. Many people have argued that we see the police on the street doing what the police, we see the army on the street doing what the police should be doing. And many have argued that the army has no business enforcing law and order in other centers and other places of the country. We should be in the barracks or who are showing the order, directing the gun to any aggressor coming from without the right the territory. They wish to very some life from the president of the forces alongside the police, also are going to take it away to insurrection and other.
General Muhoozi, we appreciate that we are in an unprecedented time where we have got to respect the standard operating procedures of COVID, one among them being keeping a mask on. But for purposes of audibility and clarity, I wish to request humbly that you take off your mask. The room is sanitized.
That you get a bit of COVID.
But we also know everyone around the table, including Mwenda, so we will certainly get the contacts that may have caused any harm to you.
So I want to say we first have to take it easy as a country and as members of the same family. But that said, you started with the issue of street presence of the UPDF. Maybe let me give a broad brush of functions like my colleague from the police. They are known, including the main one of national defense and security. But also the other one among them, where Fande Saleh sits, of taking part in production in order to contribute to the social and economic development of the country. I'm trying to give a context to OWC, which is an operation other than war. And this is, I think, to me, where the main issue lies of the connection between security and development. And this, I think, is a realization that state security is not self-serving. It's fed by other issues, including the issue of, talked about severally by the people around the table, of livelihood. Livelihood is very key. As we enforce, as we secure the country, we are mindful that it's about people. Bottom line, it's about people. So I want to say that there is indeed a connection between security and development. But that said, we are also mandated to support civil authority. And coming to this period of elections and the attendant anxiety, which I think has been hyped beyond what it should be. The mess of democracy also, which is unregulated, needs to be commented about. Fande Saleh has talked about this inciting literature, among others. Media is amok, everybody says what he wants. We have many echo chambers and the attendant reverberations, very confusing, especially by our young people. So we need to manage this. We need to manage this. Speaking from security, we need to enforce the law firmly, because whatever ambitions we have, I think we need a stable space to pursue our dreams. So we need to use all the levers available, including the hard element of what we do. And that's why we thought it was important to invest in prevention. That's why we were asked by the police to help them, but we thought presence on the streets is important to reassure Ugandans that all is well, especially mindful of the narrative now set by things like this literature shared by Afande Saleh, shared by the unregulated media. Thankfully, Mr. Kasiate, you are from media. Thanks to the hate speech, thanks to the tensions in the air. So we thought it's best we invest in prevention, knowing that reaction most times may be costly. So I think that one explains our presence on the streets. But also I think we need leadership in this. Leadership not just from members of the security forces, but leadership from the private sector, leadership from the media, leadership from religious leaders, leadership from even members of the opposition who are aspiring to take government, leadership of government itself, of that narrative that restores hope in the population, peace and security, because all this is shared by all the players in this matter. About the nexus between security and development, very, very important. We've been reminded time and again by General Saleh that the guns are silent. So what? So what? So I think part of the narrative should be to connect the peace dividend to opportunity for these young people. But also, like Mwenda said, it's not that jacket kind of thing, straight jacket kind of thing. I think it's not automatic that if people's interests are catered for, then they won't agitate for more. You gave the example of Libya. So I think we also need to manage the youth. This idea that being a young person is in itself a badge of entitlement, I think is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's not a coupon for lunch that you are young. We are all young at one time or the other, but that one is transitional. If you are young, how do you channel your energy to meaningful livelihood? I think that is a debate we can start now, but it's a debate that should be continued by every well-meaning Ugandan. For now, those are my comments, but I'll contribute more as we go along.
General Muhoozi, thank you very much for giving us that global perspective, but I will not let you off the hook until we get down to what they say, the devil is in the details. I want to use some of the snippets of what you said. We shall ensure that we enforce the law firmly, using all the levers available to us. Honorable Semujungana, listening to that statement from his hellhole in Kasokoso, will immediately interpret it to mean that you are coming to beat the hell out of him for the slightest misdemeanor, even as he goes about his campaign.
Not at all.
Doesn't he require reassurance that you are not out specifically targeting him and his ilk to erase them from the surface of our politics by giving them the hardest blow available to you?
I talked about the mess of unregulated democracy, and I thought that one, maybe for purposes of detail, everybody has rights, freedoms, liberties, but in exercising those, you must be mindful of the rights of others. So coming to voting day, for example, we want to urge the population, step out and vote, because there's this anxiety that when you go out, you'll be harmed. So my starting point is that everyone who registered to vote should step out and vote for the candidates of their choice. But once you do so, step back and go home. because all the contenders have their agents, and their agents will cater for their interests at the polling stations. But what we are hearing now is that vote and stay there, and that is a recipe for trouble. So if you vote and stay there to cause chaos at the polling station, then certainly you'll be firmly dealt with according to the law. That is what I wanted to amplify here. So as you exercise your right to vote and the other democratic freedoms and liberties, do so mindful of the law, do so mindful of the rights of other people, of other Ugandans.
When you meet General Muhoozi in his full regalia and have a conversation with him, you're speaking to a distinguished gentleman, calm, collected, and quite very understanding. Until you meet his men in uniform on the streets holding the arsenal that has been provided to them. And I think that's where we also have the disconnect, like General Saleh said, the disconnect between NRM government and NRM organization. The leadership of the security forces, Andrew Sorowen here, General Muhoozi, fine gentlemen of acclaimed personality, until we meet what my friends and others would say are the rogue characters wearing your uniform. What happens at that point where you are unable to rein in, which is many times often, on the foot soldiers on the ground and what they are doing, and that wonderful rosy picture that you share with us at a platform such as this as leaders?
There's something they call voluntary assumption of risk. So I would want to urge Ugandans, don't voluntarily take on risk. Abide by the law, simple, and everything will be fine.
I have not known a man that answers these questions so firmly, succinctly, and very articulately as General Muhoozi. I can't push the back any further unless, of course, my co-host wants to fire him a question or two. You know, you are the one who rescues me from dangerous situations, General Saleh.
But for me, it seems the security forces have understood the equation that you cannot police hunger, that you cannot police unemployment, that you cannot police underdevelopment. It's very, very clear now in their heads because we have really tried to elaborate it. So they have that picture completely, but that's why OWC was very useful to the UPDF, because we took them to the ground. We gave them the ground picture of the levels of poverty and the need for them to understand it deeper. So I think these days I find them really on the street, not as combat people, but mainly they go there to first educate. We have tried to tell them, connect with OWC officers on the ground. When all this chaos started happening, I offered the Inspector General of Police take over the OWC vehicles, because you need to go to these villages with messages of hope first. Then the policing and tear gas can come when it is necessary. But first get the people to get hope. They didn't take the offer seriously. Then I offered it to the army, and the army has maximally utilized it.
Wow.
Go to the grassroots, go to the ghettos, and explain this situation. And I think they have a full understanding of the scenario now. So now the request to those angry people or to the underprivileged is that connect and talk and discuss. Solutions are on the way. That is my input on that, and I think both of them are beginning to understand it, because we told the police, use the community policing method. Go with the community, let them. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy has not taken all our reports seriously. You take a situation like that, you report it through the bureaucracy, then that's where situations start getting distorted. But otherwise, the message from 2016 has been very clear, because we saw it in 2011, we saw it in 2016, and we seriously anticipated it in 2021. But then the bureaucracy, the Gorovas, the NRMG is not responding to the threat that you have projected. But for me, as a senior presidential advisor on defense, really I think the security forces have understood the challenge. and I think they are beginning to respond to it.
I must apologize to our listeners across the country that we are having intermittent interruptions in our connectivity, but we are now trying our level best technically to ensure that the show flows seamlessly, and for any interruptions we do apologize, but we are getting there. Did I see your hand up before I bring in Sorowen, General Mhozi?
Yes, I want to amplify what General Saleh said about foundational security. We security for who? That's a fundamental question to ask and to seek answers for. So we have realized that we need to enlist the support of the population in what we do. Going by the events of 18th, the riots that happened, we saw the absence of the population as the first line responders, because we thought before security comes in, even for purposes of early warning, the population must be involved. So this, they said, we have been engaging, especially what we think now, because of socio-economic reasons, have been turned into the matchbox of instability, the ghetto young people. So we've been engaging them around alternative means of livelihood, not looking at elections as an opportunity to become even with the Kasiates of this world, because for them it's not even about politics. It's about elections as a time for catch up. Like Afande Saleh said, I must ride the vehicle of OO, I must grab a necklace of a lady. So we're saying that you can do so in more decent ways. And then, of course, now add the other preventive means I talked about, of presence on the streets and all. But we have been engaging, and I think it will bear fruit.
Thank you, General Mhozi. And yes, hopping on to the apology I earlier gave to you, our listeners. For that reason, we are going to extend our conversation time to beyond the stipulated time of the Capital Gang, if for nothing else, to use the words of General Mhozi, to catch up on some lost time in the background. Andrew Sorowen, you want to wrap up on that issue?
Yeah, I would like to say something on the combination of a polling station. People want to break the law straight away. A polling station has a combination of a polling constable who is in uniform but not armed. Then, within there is a polling agent for every candidate. Very clear, who will take care of the party's interests, blah, blah, and rest, up to the end of the voting. Then we shall have polling officials. They belong to EC. Then the nearest person who can come to a polling station is a patrol team. Theirs is to ensure that the process is going on without any inconvenience. But you can imagine straight away people are telling their people, some leaders are telling people to vote and remain. So they are clashing with the law straight away. And that one answers you, the question you answered me, that if we came in to say, members, please extend there will be no yes, no yes, no yes. So maybe it is deliberate to disorganize elections. We are also ready for that. And the last warnings have been given. Last night I was watching TV. The IGP was very clear that if you disrupt these elections, you'll face it roughly. He's not saying that we shall molest people and do what. We shall use the necessary force to arrest whoever is bringing the problem. But it looks very funny that a leader tells people to remain at the polling station. Sure. So I wanted really to clarify that one, that we're aware about it and we're ready for whatever.
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
And we listen to the warnings, especially for the journalists, that we will be beaten for our own good. so that we don't...
Simon, there's one thing I just briefly I want to say. Let us know that the primary function of the state is to ensure law and order by protecting the life of every person and their property. For the state to perform that role, it must enjoy and exercise a monopoly over instruments of violence. And for the state to enjoy a monopoly over violence, it must possess more power than any single individual or organization. Because if there was any entity or individual stronger than the state to exercise violence, then the state cannot perform its function. That is why those who are planning, rather than planning for an election, should know that it has cost this country so much in lives, in money, in time, in development to ensure stability. You can't come and say that the only outcome of the election is your victory. If you don't win, then you must burn the country down. Surely, I hope General Mhozi and Sorwen, you are well organized to ensure that the state's instruments of coercion or instruments of violence will be able to reign supreme in Uganda, because people are online threatening violence openly. Even on the official hashtags, they're saying they have Plan B outside of the election.
Andrew, for the first time I'm enjoying you. You're normally interviewing me, but now
you want to interview me, Afande?
I'm moderating.
He is the moderator.
Really, with 300 radio stations, with a nice package.
So that is another source of risk. Again, they go to NRM. NRM has failed to establish a strong footprint on social media. By abandoning that space, it has allowed freelancers in violence to take over and mobilize the population, commit violence using social media. So they can sidestep traditional media, television and radio and newspapers, and they can directly go. You will remember that yesterday, Afande, Twitter shut down the account of President Donald Trump because he was actively instigating violence. He had 88 million followers. So they said, we have shut you down. Right now, you cannot find Trump on Twitter. They have blocked it.
For me, if there is fire that will be reached in Uganda, it is through the
social media especially.
Even this one, the one we are seated on now. The traditional, because you are so free, you have 300 radio stations. Passing a message of hope, a message of clarity on government's plans, really will change the attitude. But if you see the presentations now on the radio, like this one, that one, everybody thinks like it is so personal.
But I find this is on live. It's not on any television, on any radio station, in any newspaper.
But Mwenda, you know it. Why have you never discussed it in all your talk shows?
Can I tell you, my own belief actually is that discussing it is to give it legitimacy.
No. If you leave that thing on the scene.
General Saleh will save you from the bilateral commission when it destabilizes.
Sure.
And bring us back to the core conversation. You made an important point, which then I will now drag in the rest of the gangsters to make mention of. You said you cannot police hunger. You cannot police poverty. When there is poverty, there is a hunger in the population. However well intentioned your policing methods are, however astute they are in terms of proficiency, that will fall flat on its face. And so you as government practitioners have decided to go in the direction of fighting hunger, fighting poverty, so that then you can ameliorate the situation the security forces face. But then one would want to ask, General Saleh, this is 35 years since you came marching into Kampala as government. 35 years, one would have assumed that you would have fought hunger, fought poverty, and now would be singing Kumbaya in the promised land.
That question really, if you use I'm moderator today or moderator it. Because how much value added have you added yourself as Kasia in the last 34 years? You just measure by your own self. How much value addition has Mwenda achieved from in 34 years? How much value addition has who? The country. Value addition, because for instance, the value of land in Kampala in 1986 was how much?
An acre for $30,000.
What? No way. That was 86. It was like I bought 2 acres, I think, in Uziga at that time, less than 10 million shillings in Uziga. So, how much is an acre of land in Uziga? It's a hit. It's now reaching $500,000.
More than that, maybe.
So the value addition that has taken place in this country needs to be contextualized by Reuters so that it is projected. So when you say there is nothing done in 34 years, it's really, yes, it is not true. Because when we were capturing Kampala, the start line was at Osega. Now if you want to capture Kampala, the start line is at Kayabwe. Yeah. After Guam. Because for me, yes, for me the start line to capture Kampala was Osega roundabout. I said if I reach that roundabout, Kampala is finished. And radio Uganda. But now you have to capture 300 radio stations. So you have to be. So when a senior panelist is saying what is the value addition, then you get lost. So I think we need also to refocus our questions. For me, what I wanted to achieve out of this whole situation is the understanding, the assurance from these guys that they understand the security challenge that they have. And in my opinion, over the last 6 months, I think they have rehearsed and they understand the scenario completely.
Thank you very much, my co-moderator, General Saleh, for that input, and I will answer your question very directly. How much value have I added to myself in the last 5 years?
Mwenda, please let me speak for myself. When you came marching into Kampala in 1986, I was just going to join primary 1.
Really?
Now I am an adult male with several children, almost becoming a grandfather, with a bald head and still going strong.
And they have Numbuya and Matibé. They have Numbuya here and Matibé. And the land is we are known.
We are no longer in the Numbuya circle, the rural circle, we are no longer there.
You are outside Kampala.
Outside.
But that said, I will now turn to my colleague on the gang, Ofono Kondo, who has listened keenly and attentively. But I would want him to go straight to that question that General Saleh did put across as cohort. You can't police hunger. You can't police anger as well, but you also cannot police poverty. You're the one who answers for the NRMO many times, yet you're also in NRMG. And he talked about the disconnect between what government technocrats put in place in terms of wonderful policies and action plans like NDP3, as well as what is actually implemented on the ground. What, in your view, Opondo, do you think is the bottleneck that doesn't allow what is planned and put in terms of policy to what is actually on the ground?
Well, first of all, I also want to disabuse that what we are saying. A lot has been made, but a lot remains to be done. There's a lot of engagement between the population and the government. A lot of engagement doesn't mean that it is sufficient or even effective. We need to make sufficient and effective engagement with the population across the board. Yes, there's the internal weakness in NRMG. Why? Because traditionally, the civil service that we run tends to operate in silos. And I think the restructuring of government that's going on is intended to achieve synergy building, so that what Ministry X does, I mean, you have had somebody here saying that, you see, the army's traditional role is just to keep the borders. Now, that's borrowing, not for an African country, not for Ugandan society. Then you say, because in Uganda you don't have sufficient policemen, for example. So if violence breaks out, how can you just stand by and say that's the work of the police? You must then bring in the other elements of security of the country with the modification. And that's why the framers of the Constitution said the army shall cooperate with the other agencies and civilian authority. Secondly, General Saleh did answer you in terms of what has been done. And let me just make it clear. The laws of Uganda does not say that because you are poor, because you are hungry, you break the law. The law, the implementation does not make a distinction between a poor person who breaks the law and a rich person who breaks the law. And so I think we should not give the people an impression that because you are poor, then you can break the law. The government and the political machinery, the political party machinery should engage with the population. And there's a lot of sensitization going on. Let me just add that the overwhelming majority of Ugandans are law-abiding. We have a small element, especially incited, instigated by leaders. And when I did mention here about Libya, it is not that the well-off people were discontented with the wealth. There was a heavy dose of foreign influence of what happened in Libya, what happened in Tunisia, what happened in Syria, what happened in Egypt. In our own current context, if you see the hostile posture in the media, traditional media and social media, fake news, disinformation, false news, somebody sits down and conjures up, like what Jerusalem has essentially given us. You see a heavy dose of foreign influence, negative foreign influence. And therefore, I think we need to let Ugandans know that some of the statements by leaders is being encouraged, being funded, being emboldened by foreign groups. So Ugandans need to be aware, because you have had somebody running for presidency and he's saying, we can bring the guys who can bring the people in Uganda. We can bring the Tahrir Square. So we need Ugandans to be aware that some of these statements are coming. You even see people doing things because they think they are soiling the government, they are soiling their country in the eyes of foreign people. And I think that should be really a pointer, that leaders like those actually don't deserve their vote on 14. People who are doing things because they want to be seen, they want to be praised by foreign interests. The other element is, I think the police has done sufficient, the combined security has done sufficient threat assessment upon which deployments are going on. And there should be no reason for a Ugandan, law-abiding Uganda, to worry why police is patrolling, why the army is patrolling. The only people who should be fearful of the police patrol, of the army patrol on public spaces can only be people with a criminal intent. The record of this government is very, very clear, has been ably demonstrated over the last 3 decades that it does not go out deliberately to witch hunt, to harm, or to assassinate political rivals. To the contrary, this government has demonstrated that even enemies captured in the battlefield are rehabilitated and actually integrated in the government. We have many examples I don't have to mention. And so the record of this government, the record of the leadership of this government speaks for itself. And yes, when mistakes occur, it is admitted, and efforts are made to make it good, to correct, and to punish errant government officials. And that's how we want Ugandan to see the electoral cycle and the continuity, the future of Uganda. I really want to say that from our perspective as government, the election is going to be peaceful. Uganda will remain peaceful and stable, tranquil, notwithstanding the latent threats, because they can be dealt with.
Let us, for argument's sake, imagine that on the 15th of January, after turning through the elections, upon you prefer the candidate doesn't garner enough votes to be declared president. Would the words you have just mentioned still ring true?
Yes, you did say that I also speak for NRM. I speak for candidate 27. From our internal tracking poll, maybe let me just tell Ugandans that while voting is going to take place on 14th, elections have been taking place in the country and the results are available. We didn't go for nominations for presidential, parliamentary, local government. The results of those nominations are available. At parliamentary level, as we speak, NRM has 15 members of parliament returned unopposed on account that nobody, including political parties that are making noise, could find people to challenge them. At district chairman level, NRM has 7 district chairpersons. Thousands of local councillors at sub-county at district level, unopposed. Yourselves, the media, you have been conducting and publishing opinion polls. There is no opinion poll that has put candidates, that has pointed that this election will be a tie, or we shall fail to garner 50+1%. I want to give Ugandans assurance that while, yes, we are going to election, but it is evidently clear that candidate Museveni will be returned, and returned broadly across the country. And yes, for purposes of debate, we can argue whether we shall not get 50+1% for purposes of debate. But in reality, that's what's going to happen on the 14th when the tallying is done.
General Saleh, earlier on you mentioned and put your hands in the air that money meant for the rehabilitation and development of northern Uganda was sent here and it was hidden. You are still running a new campaign through Operation Wealth Creation, tagging in the National Development Plan 3, and all the other well-meaning policies and programs. All these will require money, and the money is still coming back to the same old Ugandans, who I suspect may as well eat it, because the president has been said that you can eat the money, walk away scot-free, because General Saleh is not the IGG, he's not the Chief Justice. You are not the IGG. Perhaps there's no chance you're about to become the IGG. How then can we guarantee that all these resources you're trying to clamor for, with these well-meaning and well-articulated programs, and yet all of us in poverty, will actually do that you plan it to be, and that even those who put their hands
into that cookie jar will face the full wrath of the law as it should be?
Let me give it to Andrew Mwenda. Let him try first.
I did not know you are very
happy. I'm happy that the moderator has given this. First of all, Afande Saleh was very, very, very wrong that the money was eaten. Because I have done research and published 2 books on Northern Uganda Reconstruction Program. They built a lot of schools in Northern Uganda here. In fact, if you drive around Northern Uganda, you'll be surprised. They have better schools than we have in Western Uganda. Why? Because their schools were built after the war, and therefore they are made of permanent materials. They have glass windows and things like that. It is true there may have been corruption. Perhaps we can say of the total 100% of the money that was allocated to NUSAF 1 and NUSAF 2, how much of it was stolen? Was it 5%, 10%? Because you see, the discussion of corruption in Uganda it is as if all government money of the budget is taken by private individuals. So if you look at this year's budget, the actual budget is 45 billion, but really remove about 13 trillion rather, which is rolled over government debt. Then you remove debt service. The actual money available for government spending on its program is about 29 trillion.
And are you trying to discount the fact that even that available 29 trillion is not and has not been being eaten?
But this is what I want to say. So whenever you cannot fight an enemy, Saleh and General Mohozi here. First wait a fund, Saleh, let me. Because remember you gave me a platform. Now you cannot take it away from me.
I told you, General Saleh, you brooded this very animal, it will eat you itself.
You cannot fight an enemy you have not. You need to recognize, do assessments and say this is the strength of the enemy. Otherwise you'll deploy blindly. If we would say there is corruption in Uganda, what percentage of public funds gets stolen? Because Sorwen, don't you get your salary? General Mohozi, don't you get your salary?
The issue of corruption is all of us who are seated here are corrupt in one way or another.
I agree.
Why are you saying that looking at me, General Saleh?
Because you're the most corrupt you can see.
Because people have failed to understand this whole argument. Now, you know, I have now been heavily involved in the creative and cultural creative arts.
Yes.
Because there is a very big group. But if you see the corruption that is going on in the studios of radios, the children were crying and saying, I have sung my song, it is a hit, but I have to pay
the producer
in order to get priority for my song to play. Now, really, why can't we be straightforward with this issue of corruption? And you have really put me into a dangerous, because I'm now going to be a host, a TV host. I'm feeling excited.
I will do the training, Sam.
Because now we are about to create an outlet called WOW, WOW.com, meaning who owns what in Uganda, so that we first remove that, delete that, those conspiracies, because corruption. All of us really need some intervention, some God's intervention, because all of us who are seated here are corrupt in one way or another.
And now we've reached a point where we cannot deal with it, but we need divine intervention. We need
you
God
ask
to...
yourself inside your own self, the way you are talking and looking at me. You need to really do something more different. You need to talk about this thing called corruption in a stable...
But I want to know, can we do an audit of these NOSAFs? I know there's so much that was done. Of that 3-point-something trillion, how much was stolen? Because sometimes we blame government officials unfairly to say 3.4 trillion, all of it came here, it was stolen. A lot of work was done by OPM. Yes, there was corruption.
It's the same Mwenda with whom I had a discussion many years ago when I was cutting my journalistic teeth, who said the biggest industry in this country is corruption, and that you mentioned 500 billion or 50, I can't remember the figure, but it was 500 that is in the corruption industry. Now today you're saying you don't know the figure that is perforated through corruption?
No, but
that may not actually be the issue, Andrew. The question is, those that are accused of, are they taken through the judicious process and punished prohibitively for others not follow the same path?
Okay, let me tell you another thing, because you see these are the misrepresentations I want to correct. Let me give you an example. There was corruption in OPM. The leader of that corruption was Kazinda. Where is he? There was corruption in pensions. The principal, whatever, was Obey. Where is Obey? There was, I think, a problem in local government ministry over bicycles. Where is the PS? I'm telling you, you go to Luzira, you find that prison teeming with practically every government official who was involved in the last corruption scandal. But Ugandans don't get this idea that actually corruption gets punished. Look, the wheels of justice turn slowly in Uganda. Why? Because Uganda follows due process. People will hire lawyers. They will try to use every legal rule in the book to get off the hook. But Luzira is teeming with the cows, permanent secretaries, directors, principal accountants. Every day the corruption court in Uganda sends people to jail. David Jamwa, he is your friend. He was the managing director of NSSF. Where is he?
General Saleh said all of us are corrupt, but we are here. We are not in Brazil.
Okay, but what I'm therefore saying that if you look at the
last time he was on the gang, someone looked him in the face and said, "You, General Saleh, should not be here on the gang. You should be in a jail for corruption." And I think that's why today he was very spare that room.
The point I am making is that let us not misrepresent the activities of government of Uganda. Me, I'm angry with the government of Uganda. I think I'm the angriest person against it. First of all, the fact that they cannot even make their own case. They have a strong case they can make to the public. It mentioned for me in the last 10 years, the biggest corruption scandals, and I will tell you, whoever was involved is right now in jail, is deserving a jail sentence. So you cannot say people are not being punished. That is one. Two, there are so many. Okay, government of Uganda has built 1,400 megawatts of electricity in the last 7 years. Where have they come from if all the money was stolen? We have built more than 5,000 kilometers of road as a country. Tarmac roads in the last 10 years. If the money was stolen, as Gamarere said, where has this tarmac come from? It was sent by God? I mean, look, listen, this country did a book on UPE. I think we have built 80,000 classrooms or something, a staggering number like that, 80,000 classrooms. If all the money was stolen, where did these classrooms come? By the providence of God? You see, so I think a lot has been done and we need to acknowledge it. Mistakes have happened and Uganda can never create a perfect society. Human society is inherently imperfect, and ladies and gentlemen on listening, a perfect society is impossible to create. So we have to content ourselves with an imperfect society, an imperfect Uganda, but one which is capable of infinite improvement through our efforts. You remember Saleh in the early 2000s, I was fighting General Kazin on ghost soldiers. Today, there is no longer a problem of ghost soldiers in UPDF.
You are fighting General Saleh over junk copters. You came in one.
And now I came in one. You see, okay, now you have answered it. So there is continuous improvement in the processes, procedures, and deliverables of government.
So,
now that said, I think now I can create peace between the two of you.
My co-host, and you know you have helped me to find me on my space.
Yes.
I want that helicopter thing also to be checked by CDF. There were 2 helicopters which the media decided to call junk. But you go and check with the Air Force. How many hours did those 2 helicopters fly till the end? Number 2, the army will never buy any cheaper helicopters than those junk helicopters. They were the best perfect fighting machines for the country
at that time,
and they did their work. But the media, they chose to call me
the grand master of corruption in Uganda. And you know who coined those words? Right here, Mwende.
It's up to him, really. He's faced with the man whom he called that. But you go and check with the Air Force, you go and check with the General Retire. How many did, and I remember their serial numbers, I think 506 and 507. You go and check how many hours did they fly, how many combat missions did they undertake, over what period, and how much did they cost. But like we have said, the media can choose to demonize you. Like this Kabuta family thing, total demonization without, and you all know it, but you pass it. If it is not touching you, you just leave it. But fortunately, this, the wave, there was an officer called Mutengesa, Sabit. He sent me 4 books. It's about waves of change, waves of that, waves of this. So we are in this wave now of the youth versus the aged, and we need to harmonize it, we need to address it, we need to aggressively engage them and come up to and stop them from being so militant. And I think the army has done that, and the police. So the media now, you are the ones who are really lagging us behind. So we are appealing to the media to use everything possible to suppress the anger, the misinformation, the whatever is happening. So I think these guys are set. The development side is set because we have been overstudying it. The security group has been adapting very, very fast because they clearly see the challenge. So we are hoping that you can have a very smooth election, and we wish you all the best.
Before I bring in General Muhoozi, a listener has just sent in a comment which says, let us not beat around the bush, let's confront the big elephant in the room. And to him, this particular listener, he believes that the biggest elephant in the room that propagates the lack of effectiveness and execution of these wonderful policies and alleviate poverty and anger is that there is a huge in your government bureaucracy, that you have many people doing a job that could have done by few, and therefore there is too many cooks spoiling the soup. Today, General Saleh, Superintendent of Operation Wealth Creation, is advising the president is doing what, but there are also other advisors. The anti-corruption institutions are so many, a committee of parliament, a whole court, the IGG, the DPP, everybody is looking at corruption, but the result is not coming in. So, in their view, government needs to be a little more streamlined and specific. But he also adds an extra one, which I agree with them, that you need to put the right people in the right jobs. Perhaps the right CDF in the right seat. And that mentioned, I will turn over to General Muhoozi on the assumption that indeed, and he has proved himself to be the right CDF but at this particular time.
All that rearrangement of government is the biggest part of NDP3. That's what I wanted the country to know, that all the experiences that we have had has formed part of what we are projecting as NDP3.
But will it be done, General Saleh? You see, NDP is a National Planning Authority is known to have some of the best written literature, and I will use the word literature deliberately. They have wonderful plans and policies and programs, but they gather dust on their Clement Hill office, and we never see them on the ground. Some will argue.
That's why they have a program now called Development Plan Implementation. It's a program on its own. I think this time they are more serious than before.
General Muhoozi.
Thank you, Simon.
Again, I will request humbly that we take off the mask. Thank you.
I want to, it will be in form of a question, the opportunity basket, especially to the NDP3 person. Agriculture, industry, IT services. I don't know if this is elastic enough to cater for especially the ghetto community or the uneducated, unskilled, unhoused, and all of those things, the urban youth. Then too, the question of national consciousness, education. What I think we are facing is also the crisis of consciousness among our young people. And that vacuum naturally is filled by the other influences, including foreign ones. So can national service help? I think it can, so it's something to think about. I usually raise it with the General Saleh, and he says, he is not very about the timing, but I think it's something we need to seriously think about, especially the minds of these young people. Aside of the livelihood issues, I think there's also the issue of national consciousness. Then last, I think as security, like Mwenda said, we need to ensure that the state is strong, that resilience to deal firmly with whoever crosses the line. And also I think O said this, so aside of this, you don't have a blank check to commit crime, to do all those bad things. So the state should, throughout, maintain the resilience, the capacity to rein in those who cross the line. So those are the few comments I wanted to make for now.
Thank you, General Muhoozi, for that, and always very calculated responses. And I believe that to whom the message was meant, others will argue that lawyers are liars, but he seems to be a sincere one.
The island of opportunity, can you comment on the urban?
Dr. Guroba, General Muhoozi puts the back right at your doorstep. Please make that response. I'm also told that Ofono Pondo, considering that he's been all his life a journalist, he may want to respond to the challenge that has been thrown to the media in terms of setting the agenda and very specifically an agenda that is nation building as opposed to nation splitting.
Thanks. In response to General Mhozi's question, what I want to assure Ugandans that NDP is something for every Ugandan. Something for every Ugandan. What we need to do is, again, here I accept with my peer who has said we have done a weak job, particularly from National Planning Authority, to communicate what these things are for every Ugandan. And this is where we need to take that another 3-4 steps forward, and we need to build on that. Because when I listen to what Andrew Mwenda talked to, at the end of when we were summarizing, I was actually very, very excited the way he was communicating as if he has read the NDP, because all the issues he tried to connect are related to that. Now, to directly answer General's question,
but
is
what is your budget for communication at NDP? At NPA?
Actually, we have about 150 million. It's a budget issue.
What is your budget?
I agree.
Tell us your budget, because that's where you all go wrong. You don't say the reality, then you go and
we have we don't have an adequate budget for communication. That is
so all the government agencies don't have budgets for communication.
Perhaps not even the skill set to do the communication.
That's a good thing.
In fact, Afande, I should tell you, the government of Uganda has cut all budget for communication. But the host, you are not giving me a chance.
Now, you look at the budget of Ministry for National Guidance, 500 million shillings a year for national guidance. So that's why people are not communicating, and you have tried to over attack me over lack of communication, but you are not doing a proper analysis. So because because you are not communicating the plan, that's why people are blank. That's where there is a lot of assumptions. That's where there is. So how?
And indeed,
let me blame General Saleh, because
indeed one of the
you are the
listeners
cause
has
of most of this problem. General Saleh sat with his team. They said consumption. They said communication is consumptive expenditure. Now in this budget, Afande Saleh, you yourself, you cut it to zero. In fact, whatever was small, you skinned it and left nothing.
Deliberately, because they wanted people to raise against me.
Okay, but
those ones who were cutting, they wanted all of them, they wanted to blame me.
Anyhow, for me, Afande Saleh should tell you this. You know a company called Coca-Cola, or even MTN. These are marketing companies. Whatever product they have,
you are going to miss a chance. See, if asked him what are the opportunities, if he doesn't articulate them, then the show is meaningless. Tell us the opportunities for the
young.
Yeah, actually, from the opportunities for the young, we categorize the youth into 3 categories from the planning angle. We have those who are educated, and those are mainly our kids, for people in this room. The nature of the jobs they are looking for are those white good jobs. So you need to address that. Then you have the other youth who have gone through BTVET, vocational institutes. The reality on the ground that majority of those actually have jobs, but the issue they face is whether these jobs are well paid enough, because these are the carpenters and what. Then you have the other third youth, which is the bigger challenge now, the ghetto people. Either they dropped out of school, or they fall in somewhere, or they did something. Majority even did not go to school at all. And that's what you need to work, because there are 2 levels. There's that you could educate. There's that totally whatever you do, whatever conversation you talk through in education doesn't affect them. So as planning, we have to tackle all those. And how are we proposing this? Is that through there is a category we are tackling through in the industrial agenda, in terms of industrial parks that are being proposed, in terms of cottage industries that are being proposed. The second category is actually wherever they are, you get a skilling. There's a youth skilling program within NDP.
They are facing is actually, for expansion side, they are facing 2 main challenges. The first challenge is that of more capital for them to expand, and the capital is very little. Somebody just needs 100,000 and he sort out all his problems, because he's doing chapati, he needs to sigiris and the ingredients that go with that, the cassava. So when you do that, the issue where we are tackling that is why the micro support center comes in to be able to support this, to work with them, but more importantly, in this model that we are proposing NDP 3, that's why we are proposing a parish model, the parish model where you are talking to the people, the person in the parish who knows the specific household. It's not just in the past plans where we are staying at macro, we are actually going more to micro level to know which household is where, what problems it faces directly, so that you derive government support and activity to be able to support these people in terms of having the right circle, in terms of having the work. That's why I think issues related to renewal gas supporting this. I don't know if
what is not measured cannot be measured is one of the major tenets of measurement. We know that your national development plan again, convincing them from what you have in terms of I think to deliver, even the structure is above 70%. You already have incapacitations in communicating what you intend to do, which I think for me would be a first step in every direction that people hold to. That you do not have in terms of budget and even technical capacity. So one is, how then can we trust you to effectively implement these plans and projects? And I have to tell General Saleh that he knows that how can we count on it?
Two things. One is that in the plan we have a specific program on development plan implementation. And this program starts from understanding the problem of implementation. And that's why when you came to the issue of a lean government, there is another program of public sector transformation, which is trying to make sure that the public sector is lean but more accountable. And that's why when Captain Sorwen, Assistant Inspector General Police, did talk to the issue of managing the communication, managing the way we manage the policing. It was more entirely in terms of public sector transformation. We talked about restructuring of government. The conversation now in government is how do we structure government to make it more responsive to private sector. Secondly, let me complete. Secondly, we recognize that the issue of data is very key, because one departure from NDP, the other NDP, is that we have introduced what we refer to as a programmatic approach. The programmatic approach to planning, what it does is you try to make sure you connect the dots, because the challenge we had from other plans is every government entity was working a silo approach, and we were not able to realize the results. Now, because of that, we introduced a programmatic approach, and one silent issue for that programmatic approach is statistics. And what we are talking about, that statistics should be a game changer. There are issues that we are talking about, is that you need to know the timeliness. The timeliness of data becomes very key. As a government, we have a lot of statistics that we are not connecting dots to. You have national ID, you have passport information, you have administrative data at parish level, you have a lot of information that we are not able to connect.
And
they don't speak to each other. So the proposal we are putting in NDP is that for us to be able to know, to strategize more as we are budgeting where we should be having impact, we need to make sure that we leverage the level of statistics and be able to connect these data points to make sure we have timely data on employment, labor, poverty, incomes at household level, so that those inform the strategies in terms of budget, where budget priorities we are going to go, and inform the issues related to government programs, how we are going to support each area. So those two areas, again, I reiterate, NDP has everything that we are talking about.
Now, General Saleh, I see your hand up, but I think before you come in to make your decision the way you are planning, you are allowed to do it, and we get into the zone that family. You know that for the most part, the general impression is that it all starts and ends with a man called President Yoweri Museveni, who is fairly very well known to you, and unlike many of us, you speak to him more regularly.
Don't tell me that guy is not known to you. The gentleman is not known to you.
I believe Andrew Menda has met him more times than me.
Sure?
Yeah. This has met him. That one seems to improve whatever. I have not met the president physically
for the whole year. I have talked to him more than less than 5 times in the whole year. Because
today is the 8th.
Yes. Yes.
So in 9 days you're spoken to you 5 times.
No, from 2020. No, from 2020. Because I don't need to speak to him. No, he gave me an assignment. I have got my work. There is no need. That's another one of those what is it? Machination. That I'm speaking to him on a daily basis. That I'm having tea with him every weekend.
By the hour,
so, Capital Gang, you have come into my space. You are helping me really to elaborate a few issues. So, remove that one from the perspective that you were trying to create.
When you have had those few moments that you speak to him,
yes,
and raised to him his or time, what generally is? Does he dismiss the aspiration?
No. For him, he's from, and that may be his difficulty. Whatever as OWC, whatever proposals we have made to him, he subjects them to cabinet. He subjects them to parliament. He subjects them to the law. That is his style. Whatever good ideas, except if they are security related, that's when he takes the director. But economic, political, social, he must subject them to the due process. In 2016, after the elections, we submitted a dossier called institutional. What was the heading, Kojo? There is we gave it a very thorough study called institutional. Yeah, but the heading was more clear, which showed him that that duplication that you talked about, we handed it in June 2017. He internalized it, submitted it to cabinet to parliament, it got stuck there. So for him as a man, he does not panic. But he pushes things through his colleagues. So that's all I can say about him. Sometimes it delays him, sometimes it helps him for total mobilization. This is my opinion. But I spoke to him only today morning. Then maybe last year in December. So that assumption that I'm on hotline with him is another one of those of the Kabuta family, which nauseates me. Because for me, I'm on my own, as you can see. But permanently,
finally, even the spirit father, when you call
it was a very funny subject, but I don't want to discuss it. Very, very private and a bit. So don't mix me up in that. You ask a different question if you want to understand that. At least this one, you have helped me to put it on the. I have not. The CDF meets him more times. When I was commander, of course, but now I'm no longer commander. He talks to him, I think, every day. And I think Mwenda, you have talked to him that. He talks to the police, I think, every hour. But me, OWC is another group, it is there. But he knows what we are doing. He knows that he sent us to get in contact with the population, and we have done that perfectly.
And when we don't do that satisfactorily, for the material terms of it, we expect this period to have
ask Yamle, ask Emmanuel there, ask Petronella, ask NADS, ask UDC, ask UDB, those agencies that we are in partnership with. Those ones can give you the perfect setting. They are there because we are just agents, we are just mobilizers. We, the army officers, are mobilizers of the communities.
Some have thrown in criticism to your presence in there. and it was just one of those platforms to appease you and keep you busy from causing major discussion and combat. The next thing, the operation investigation, you busy yourself in there, someone who can steal some money, and generally don't cause commotion and perhaps even have a look and an eye complaint.
But then if that is the assumption, let them check the facts on the ground. Let them check on the facts on the ground, on what they have been able to achieve in terms of the agencies that we are in partnership with. You check with UCDA, check with the NADS, check with the DBA, check with the REA, check with the Uganda Industrial Research Institute, check with UDC, check with UDD, because those are our partner agencies in reaching the ground, and I think they have done a lot of work.
General Saleh, we are 5 days away from the election. Whatever you do may be well-meaning intervention by government to relieve us citizens of Uganda out of the country. But let's not kid ourselves in imagining that this has nothing to do with making better the fortunes of President Museveni as a presidential candidate and the NRM as the government response to being power. One would also argue directly and say, what you do as all of this is a subtle, perhaps even subterranean campaign for NRM. Is that true?
No, it's not true. Because that question emerged the other day when we were dealing with the culture and creative groups. Those guys are very, very hostile NRM. But for us, we see value in them as a sector. So, and that's why we have been discussing, engaging, educating, until we are almost reaching somewhere with those groups which are presumed to be hostile, but not because they are with because we are campaigning for the NRM. We are permanently criticizing the NRM ourselves. Like I have just said, that the NRMO and NRMG, that disconnect is causing the anxiety in the public. And I think they are trying to up their stake. So, I don't know what you wanted to ask about the president. What did you want to ask?
Two things. One, that of course he got you and your co in there, keep you busy so that you do not.
That was a very good way. It was a very good choice. But we really have performed beyond expectation. You underrated us. You called us the old soldiers who were useless, but the performance that we have put on the ground. And that was these are the young ones who were throwing us out of the space. But they didn't know that they had thrown us into the real space where people live. If you take it from that angle, then they miscalculated. Because we have grounded ourselves, we have educated ourselves, we have created linkages with all the universities, we have created linkages with the private sector, and with the So, if that was the assumption that was the main thing, then we have achieved the objective very well. Sure. Why?
How do you think?
Ignorance. You know, some people judge others by character. Others just because for me, I'm looking at creativity. Is the person creative enough? Can she or he change a textile into a dress? Can he change mukene from being chicken feet into the highest level of protein? So I'm looking at that and on Silvio, she's a grounded person. She has got experience of marketing anything. So why are you hostile against her, if I may know?
Well, like you said,
the mindset of the elites. Then I forgot now. The biggest challenge, my groups have texted me something. They say the biggest challenge that we have is the communication between the PhDs and the low levels, we are talking too much English. There is too much English that is not being understood.
Here.
Recently, I invited 112 musicians to come to Gulu. Those were the hot ones. Put them in Gulu University, and I started making a PowerPoint presentation. Slide number 1, slide number 2. Then I saw all of them going down, looking down in there. I said, what's wrong with you? He said, sir, those things are not making sense to us. Talk to us directly. So I said, how many of you speak English? I think there were 1, 2, but I think like 24 could speak English. So I think the biggest challenge that we all have is to just reduce, change your voice, change your presentation. And the English, like now Grover, he is suffering. I can see he's suffering with
English.
with his English. Because that English of yours is not going to be understood even by that one there. He's not understanding the, and he's on the mitambo. So the communication between the PhDs and that ground level is becoming more and more difficult. But how much time do we still have?
I am only going to give you 45 minutes, and let me bring in General Muhoozi for 3 specific questions, and then we get back to our conversation. General Muhoozi, now with gloves off, there have been reports of citizens being kidnapped, others being tortured, and some civilians being tried in military court facilities without what is considered to be adequate evidence to put them in that circumstance. Others have argued that is the usual panic that seems to bedevil this government when it's faced with an election that is close, such as this one. Do you have a comment to make to that allegation, or perhaps that state of affairs?
Thank you, Simon. I want to respond first to the allegations of illegal arrests and allegations of torture.
General Muhoozi, I love your mask on, but I love it
by security services. But to give a context to this, first of all, I'm not admitting to this because we follow due process. And if you are referring to the Kalangara group, the other day they appeared before court, and the choice of court was informed by the content of the suspicions against them. One of them in particular, whose house was searched, was found with military equipment. And by that, when you do possess stores which are in the normal course of dealing, the monopoly of the armed forces, you voluntarily bring yourself into the jurisdiction of the service courts. So that is what happened for that group. They were charged and remanded. The other ones who haven't been found in similar circumstances have been taken to the police and arraigned before the courts. Specifically, if you are talking about the group of the 18th riots, many of them in the civil prison on remand, but having appeared before the civil courts. Then 2, you talked about torture. Torture is never and has never been our policy. If you could substantiate your claims, we can follow up and investigate. And if we find culpable, whoever is responsible, then we bring him to order through our service courts. Torture is not our thing. If it happens, it's punishable.
I will put to you my second question, which is also very specific. There has been talk that indeed after the election, the country may witness a second total lockdown. Not so much because COVID has taken a debilitating toll on the nation, but because you want to ensure full subjugation of the population to the result of an election, which sometimes many will also argue may not be fully representative of what would have been cast as votes?
Well, I'm not aware of that one, Simon. Looks like your imagination is fertile. But if it has to happen, I think it has to be informed by the judgment of the experts, and those ones are from the Ministry of Health. But I think having reached stage 4, which is communal transmission of COVID, and then of course the tension between safety in health terms and also livelihood, any lockdown can only be localized. It can't be national. That is my layman's view, but I think it is in the remit of the Ministry of Health and the experts to advise us. But a second lockdown, national lockdown, I don't envisage it. But if it is to happen, then it has to be through the advice of the experts.
You refer to my imagination being very rich and fertile. I wish to take advantage of that and ask the last question, which perhaps you may say borders on
but also,
tremendous imagination.
Before I leave that one, Simon, I'm told we expect an explosion because of the way we have been behaving. We have lowered our guard, and they are projecting that around Feb, March, April, we are going to experience many deaths. So I think for that one, Ugandans need to brace themselves, but also to ensure that they follow the SOPs for those who are lucky not to have contracted COVID by that time.
Thank you very much for that. So going back to my fertile imagination, let us assume we are waking up on the morning of the 15th of January and your current commander-in-chief has lost the election because he's one of the contestants. Let's just close our eyes and listen to you on what you would be the next course of action, how you as the CDF and your forces would react to that. Salute the new commander-in-chief, ensure there's a smooth transition, or you'd possibly do what many have feared, the capture of the military of state power.
Why don't you let us cross the bridge? Because now you are making assumptions, and I don't think it is within your power at the moment, or my power, to decide who will win the election. So let us leave the people to decide, and then whatever happens, the country will pick it from there.
General Muhoozi, it would be unfair for you not to give us the reassurance that you would do as the Constitution prescribes you, whoever wins the election in spite of who.
I think that is the easier part, but let's leave the one who determines who to salute to do their job, and then the rest will follow, and that is the population.
Assistant Inspector General of Police Andrew Sorowen, I hope that you will make my interviewing life a little easier than General Muhoozi has, because the way he answers his questions leaves you disarmed. Pardon? He's also a lawyer, so I am a scourse between two lawyers that are dodging my questions. They are like an eel. You hold one, they slide through your grip. But I hope that General Sorowen, you'll be candid enough to give us that one last reassurance before we close the program on your end on your ability to safeguard the country, to do that cardinal role that you mentioned as number one, that is protection of lives and property. We've seen instances where certain properties are targeted, certain individuals are, as a result of political misunderstandings, and the height of which normally happens around election time. We are 5 days from that day. The assurance.
I would like to assure the public that let them remain calm. Come the voting day, you go and cast your vote, you go back home, and I leave the rest to Electoral Commission and the security. That one, we shall have peace in this country, which we really look at. Let's remember where we have come from and the rest. We have had also elections before now, and we've lived together. After elections, we go back and do business. But I would like just to say that it is the law which decides who is who. We are not going to target anybody We are not going to do what. But the moment you infringe, you tamper with the law, the police will not hesitate to arrest you and arraign you before court. So that is where the problem is. Emotions are not really welcome at this moment of time. I again repeat, we are all Ugandans. Our country is one of the best in the world. Let's go for the exercise. Let police play its role. The public also, as stakeholders, should really adhere to the law. And that will be the way forward. And I expect once every stakeholder knows his role, the elections, the incoming elections, the forthcoming elections will be a success to this country.
AIGP Sorowen, just for the final time, many a times the police has cried.
But I think there I need to help you, co-host, because the police are a bit like there is hostility towards the police.
From who?
From you.
Me?
From the news guys. For instance, we have seen tendencies of the videos that are being shot. You don't shoot the video of the policeman being attacked. You only shoot the video of the
policeman attacking.
Maybe
because there are no policemen being attacked.
No, and they are in a big dilemma. They don't, because for me, I'm a free spirit. You can see the AIGP is sticking to this
straight jacket way of answering.
But really, you need to get into the hearts and minds of people. You tell these guys to help you because you have just been isolated as a target group to be attacked.
General Saleh, in my local language, we say that camera eratere cherareva, meaning the camera only shows what it has seen. If it hasn't seen it,
camera does it. You know, but Chiga do not understand technology. That's why you say those things. You see, a camera does not take pictures. Human beings take pictures. A camera is technology. That's an enabler. Journalists in Uganda decide which image to get.
What is your budget for publicity or for
zero?
By the way, so if the nation does not raise up to support these policemen who have zero budget for publicity, then really the call from you, AIGP, should be all these people, let them raise up and support your cause, but you need to project your cause. That would be an easier option for me because the image, they have arranged the whole population against you, and you are not countering that.
General Saleh has actually helped you. Because my next question was to ask, what are some of the challenges you face in delivering that promise that you just made? Because you sound you to be in charge, but under there, in the underbelly, you have a lot of insufficiencies, many of which are financial, like he has just articulated for you, but there could be other constraints. You may wish to share with us what some of those constraints are.
Before, sorry, let me set one point. General Saleh, it's not the responsibility of journalists of Uganda to communicate on behalf of the government of Uganda. That's entirely the responsibility of the government of Uganda. That responsibility should not be shifted to journalists.
But you have become too commercial. That's a problem.
Not necessarily that. I actually think, General Saleh, that the government of Uganda, the police, and different institutions just don't understand something called public relations. Let me explain it to you in very brief, clear, precise terms. Public relations is a deliberate, you underline the word deliberate, and sustained effort, you underline the word sustained effort, at creating understanding between an institution or an individual and its various publics. A public in public relations is a target audience. It must be deliberate, it must be sustained. So what the government of Uganda does is to run around to tell your story. You have had 5 years of not telling a story. It is not easy to, in 2 months, to tell people things you have done in 5 and they absorb them. And in branding, I find if you're not building your brand, somebody else is, and always it's your competitor or your enemy. So whenever NRM is not talking, it doesn't mean there is no talking taking place. Somebody else is talking. I think that the government of Uganda needs to make it as part of its strategic imperative. This is a strategic imperative.
We use it, for us, the historicals, we use it to despise that as propaganda.
Yeah, but you are wrong.
Where His Excellency Yoweri Museveni said not long ago, and let me quote what he said. He said, I General Yoweri Museveni, the general of the revolution, the chairman of the NRM. I don't need any PR. I don't need any.
Now let me answer the president there. There is somebody, General Saleh.
That his PR, only that he's not understood.
General Saleh, there is someone called God. He is the Alpha and the Omega and the Almighty. You move around this world every day, on every corner, on every village, there is a church and a number of priests to preach his word. Just imagine how powerful God is. But God has priests, institutions, churches, books. Even when you walk on the streets of Kampala, you find people standing preaching the word of God. What of the word of Museveni, for Christ's sake? So this is the bottom line. I think NRM needs to learn. It's so important to communicate to people. Like this NDP3. You're not doing it for the government, you're doing it for the people. They must know it. They must know every aspect of it and how they stand to benefit, not them individually and
But even communication has been completely over-commercialized.
I find that's not the problem. There is a company called MTN and Coca-Cola. They spend money to market their product. Coca-Cola is the best terrible product to drink. There's a lot of sugar in it. Can cause you
so can I make you my director of communications at the allowances that I'm giving and you accept?
The what?
Can you become our director of communications?
Unfortunately, I'm incompetent to handle the work.
You missed one division as the allowances that we have. When the youth give you enough money, you will be competent. But because the money is not enough.
No. You see, let's go back. Kasiasi, just 1 minute. Kasiasi, we have generals here. What is the first principle of command?
Do you know the salary of a general?
I know, I think it's 2 million.
How much?
2 million.
2 million.
2.1 million, yes. 2.1 million. 2.1 million.
Some of us can actually pay this.
That is the salary of a foster. This is a foster, but it's 2 million shillings. The retirement package is how much? Until I refused mine, they had given me 57 million. After 29.9 years of service, I refused it. Now they have divided it to something like that.
I can take that and find it for you in case you don't want it because you're really so weird and happy. But let me finish. I was explaining a military concept. Hold a second, I was explaining a military concept. Also with the generals. First principle of command, selection and maintenance of the aim.
Which they have done.
What is the aim of the state of Uganda in these things it is doing? It is always important. And you see, I find that the aim will determine the resources needed to be achieved. So if you say our aim is to mobilize the people of Uganda to know what we are doing so that they become supportive of our work, which reduces our political costs and the cost of police interventions and the military, then we must deploy appropriate resources to that aim. If your aim of communication is that great, please deploy the necessary resources to it. A lot of the money government of Uganda spends on many useless things they don't want to mention now. A fraction of it can be spent on communication and it cools the temper, it reduces the anger and anxiety you see in Kampala.
And it makes media owners like Mwenda much richer. Now let's go to
I don't mind growing doing a good job.
So AIGP very quick. Those constraints that you face on that reassurance you given to us as a country, because we also want to hold you accountable that should there be this election and lives and property are lost, then we need really to get answers from you. But to get the rightful answers, tell us now whether you have any constraints that then can be widened for you to deliver on your mandate.
Thank you, moderator. Police has a budget, though it is weaker, and being raised all the time. Because where we began from, we were really down, but we are now somewhere, but not enough, of course. Now, this budget is finished in a way that, for example, our patrol car in 99 burns fuel 24/7. In that process, people call and give false information. There's fire inside the place, our vehicles go. There's fire tenders go, and there is. We also support institutions like KCCA. It is we who handle issues, whereas KCCA would have had their own infrastructure and military, fire trucks, etc., etc. So all the municipality will be having such things, but the police which goes to do that. So you can see how our budget goes. Now, recently, which is very important, that we have been beefed with patrol cars. Now you see every district having a sound vehicle, and other motorcycles also given, so that we really narrow this gap of leaving a gap for hooligans to take charge. So I would like to sum up by saying that we have been supported greatly to look at the election, the policing of elections, that it becomes a success. That is the transport, for mobility, that if there's something, as you call it, react, you can react and handle the situation.
And that you have.
We have been beefed. Of course, you know what it means.
And you have enough handcuffs for
and batons,
and tear gas.
Tear gas
in abundance.
Internationally, it is recognized.
And that's
tear gas international level. Recognized.
It was used on the Capitol Hill just the other day in America. Yes.
So
we better get ready for plenty of it.
Now, the policing of elections, you had 50,000 SPCs to be fast.
SPCs are special police constables.
Yes, their work is general for this election.
After that,
of course, to work as polling constables, because the people, the rest of us will be on duty looking at the security in a greater wide area, but an SPC can remain with the electoral EC officials, not armed, and ensure there is peace there. So we have built it by 50,000 SPC. We also got radio communication, so we can now talk from area 1 to area B.
So you're telling us what you have. That means all the bottlenecks have been wide.
Let me tell you, I say this planning began before. So we put ourselves, of course, you look at the black spots, ABCD, is where you put my effort, of course. So we have done everything, and jointly with the police, and to ensure that really we make these elections really a success. And the only challenge I said before was every stakeholder should play her role.
Thank you very much, AIGP and Sorwena. And as we conclude your last 2 minutes, Dr. Gurova of the National Planning Authority, in terms of winding up the conversations we've had, but also giving us a real hope for the way forward in terms of that.
As I conclude, again, I want to reiterate to say that NDP3 is the best planning that could position the country. Everybody has something in it. I want to interest the public and everybody listening that we have this book on our website, but we are willing to go out there to communicate it more. And what I'm learning from this, as I thank the organizers and particularly Jenna in particular, for inviting NPA to join this, because for me this is an opportunity to start this conversation to communicate the NDP. And to that, I want to thank you. And for you, the media who are here, for any opportunity where you are giving me, in light with what you have seen, free communication, I'll be wherever I am, whether it's at midnight, wherever, I'm willing to jump up and come and communicate. But there's something else that happens.
Please understand that communication is a job and vocation. You study and practice at once, it is very seriously. You know your profession, and it is certainly not communication. Please employ somebody to the communications job that is active and competent enough. Now, someone is saying that, Simon, are you asking for a job? No, but at least I can advise.
I fully agree with that.
But I thought you were the communications officer of the OPM. So you know. Actually, you are the Mr. Problem here. You are the communications officer of OPM, I think. Are you still?
Who is the leader?
I have only been the communications officer for one government agency in Uganda electricity. I did it for 4 years and 11 weeks. Before that, I was a Marudian journalist doing an incredible job. And after that, I am now communicating for the MasterCard Foundation, which is an international organization that is providing.
Now I have finally caught you. How many people know about the MasterCard Foundation?
Beautiful question.
Yeah, because go ahead. This is the first time because we have been hearing about it, but nobody knows exactly what it is.
And that's why they brought me on board. I am only 4 weeks old. Give me another 4 weeks. Despite the noise of the election, you'll get to know what the MasterCard Foundation is in terms of what is. But I didn't see is carrying your flask. Right, so already advertising it in front of you. Which number you have for your incubated? That's
the conversation, but it underscores the need to have astute personalities that are qualified and competent in the role of communication to take on some of these roles. Dr. Ngoroba, you're an incredible thinker, you're a wonderful statistician, policy maker, and all that. But when it comes to matters of communication,
you see, the lady is looking on the watch.
So
they're about to close us out when I thought we were just beginning to get settled.
You want to have your moment. Now, let me go to Ofono Pondo, a regular panelist.
I hadn't completed my last. That is, your comments are very valid. What I've learned from you is that the approach within which we communicate, particularly employing somebody who is able to communicate and understand the people they are communicating to, particularly the people on the ground, is very key, and that we need to take it up, not only as NPA, but even the planning framework, that we are taking it home and we need to do it. The second thing around that, the intensity at which we communicate, is also something I'm hearing from you. And as a planner, one thing as a planner you need to have is you need to have big ears, listen as much, learn as much as possible, and go out there and plan for this country. On that front, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asuman. Ofono Pondo, 2 minutes of your concluding remarks as we normally do it on the gang, perhaps, or to give us your best and worst of the week will be for next week.
And first of all, you have tried to guess the mind of the president on many areas. The president's intention is made through form of what is in his mind. Through cabinet resolution, through policy and laws enacted by Parliament assented by him. And the intention of this president, through those mechanisms, are known to work for the stability and transformation of Uganda. Which place you are insisting, everybody agrees, majority of Ugandans agree, has been. The second one, you asked about duplication. Indeed, General Saleh in 2016, the president directed cabinet, and particularly the head of public service, to initiate reform harmonization of government. That report is now out. I think about 2 months ago or 3, the Minister of Public Service said they are now doing inter-ministerial discussion. We hope after this election, if the people of Uganda return us, we should be able to see the proposals of government, how they intend to harmonize, rationalize, reduce, or even abolish some of the agencies. As you may know, many of these agencies were created by law, and therefore it is going to take a long time repealing those laws. Of course, you don't expect the agencies that are going to be wound up, the current occupants, not to stage a fight back to try and explain why they should be kept. So it's going to be a protracted discussion. The other one, you had talked about hostile media. Yes, indeed, the media is hostile, partly because elements, journalists, media owners, media practitioners are clearly partisan. They have taken a sides in this election, and so that informs their partisanship, which we don't have issues with. But there is also deliberate falsification as part of the opposition politics in this country, because opposition politics in this country is run on falsification. For the purpose of this particular election to tone down the tempo, in the last 1 week we have had marathon every day meetings with media owners, media managers, editors, journalists, talk show hosts, presenters. We hope that the message, they have got the message, and we should be able to see a change in the way they cover the remaining period of the electoral process, including the polling and announcement of results and winners and losers, so that they don't incite and embolden law breaking. There has been a pattern. You mentioned people attacking police. There has been a pattern which unfortunately the government did not see in advance, to discredit, first of all, this government, to discredit the electoral process. You have been seeing, not just the police, you have been seeing each time there is a case in court and the opposition, for example, lose, they say the courts are of no good. That's one the electoral process, so that by the time the elections are done, they will say the courts are not useful, and therefore we can take extrajudicial means the issue of Plan B, and so on and so forth. They have been trying to discredit the Electoral Commission itself and its various activities. You have seen in the last 2 days attempts to do falsification. They've thrown social media alleged ballot papers, trying to impute that the ballot papers are already out there. You have seen even the ballot papers allegedly pre-ticked in the names of candidate Museveni, for example. That's one way they've been trying to discredit the electoral process. You have been seeing them throwing things, ballot boxes with the seals broken. Things that are not true. Unfortunately, the Electoral Commission has not been robust in public engagement, media engagement, to say these are the facts. They have been discrediting the police, the army, and security agencies. And sometimes because of the conduct of some of the security elements, then it becomes believable. If a policeman manhandles, is high-handed in handling a candidate, a member of the public, like we have seen in this election, or for that matter, the media, then you expect the natural response of a human being to be hostile. So I think we should be able to appeal to the police that even when you are firm, you can be firm, but when you are even-handed.
Ofonopondo, we don't have much time on our hands.
And I just want to conclude really with this. So I think with the various engagements going on, the assurance government can give to the country is that we shall have indeed a peaceful election. Chairman Mao used to say, when you hear the thunder rumbling, you know that the ground is stable. Yes, there are people rumbling, but the ground of Uganda, of the government, is very stable. There should be no worries.
Andrew Mwenda, your concluding remarks, and just to answer very specific questions. There's been talk making the rounds that this country is going to become quite a police state in the run of the election and during the election. Internet services will be curtailed, if at all, perhaps allowed to work intermittently. There will be ghost towns in most places with enforcement of strict curfew that is perhaps lower than the 9 p.m. that we are used to of COVID and everything in between. Does that portend the ingredients of a free, fair election that you have already spoken about?
Because I don't know whether that's that, then I can respond. But I just want to...
He has told you his plan.
Let me come to this issue media has taken. I said opposition is rising. You see, I just want people in the government to know that it's no longer cool to be seen to support Museveni. It's cool to be seen to support Bobby Wine. So even when the young youth in Kampala there is pro Museveni instinctively or out of belief, they will not show themselves like that because your peers will discard you if they feel like you are not for Bobby Wine. And that's a question. I find the first wait. Please, I beg you. That's
like that one. Do you know why?
Because you have not branded yourselves. You have allowed your enemies to brand you Afande.
Like that one, you see the.
Now, not my time because your co-moderator has usurped my time.
Let me use this time to clarify something. You know, I was giving. If you want to understand this scenario, you look at the age groups. For us who are 60 plus, we are 60 plus. The ones who are 60 plus, because I'm turning 61 on election day.
Oh,
yes.
Happy birthday in advance.
Yes, but if you want to give me a happy birthday, give the system that I have worked for some time, give them 61%.
Hey. Now,
so that's number one. But now you are not understanding the conflict. We who are 60 plus are the ones who own the
means of production.
The means of production. Those ones who are aged between 18 and 35, they don't have the assets that we have. And some of them want to kill us for these assets. You get the point? So I'm requesting Ugandans to be serious, to study the situation. Because if you look at the land is owned by people who are 60 plus. The capital is owned by those guys. Now these people who are below us,
we,
the youth.
No, you are not wrong in that. For you are in the middle, which is more confused than even the peasant class. So if you don't understand that dilemma, because somebody wants land, but the land is owned by us, the older people.
So now, Father, have you usurped my time?
But I've used it purposefully.
Thank you.
So you should pay for it.
So there is a need for a proper understanding.
You said we are corrupt. You should pay for my time.
Now, so the age difference. We need to reconnect. We need to reconnect with these young people. And for me, I have found them very, very adaptable. That group which is seated outside there, they were entertainment journalists. COVID hit them so badly, they came. I gave them an alternative project. Go and look for developmental projects, not dancing projects. They have come back to report. All the time we have wasted here with the Zoom people. If you interview those
and 1 minute and
so for me, what we need to discuss, which I thought we were discussing earlier, is coming into this election, Uganda needs to address the issue of local ownership of the economy. The other day I had a meeting with a young lady who did a master of philosophy in Uganda's finance, and she discovered that in her research she found that in fact commercial banking in Uganda does not contribute to growth. It creates negative growth because banks are foreign owned, all the money they make is shipped abroad. So Uganda needs to think in MDP3, how can we ensure that the main commanding heads of the economy are locally owned? We need to increase local ownership. Two, Uganda is so much focused on foreign direct investment, but I want to demonstrate to you why I am suspicious of foreign direct investment as the vehicle for our transformation. Earlier on I said, development takes place in the context of international trade. What you sell internationally is what determines how much you earn. So if you sell raw cotton, you earn little. If you make clothes, you earn more. If you make highly advanced products, you earn more. Why is foreign direct investment through multinational capital a poor or a wrong vehicle for the transformation of Uganda? Please remember, as a rule, multinational companies do not transfer the most innovative aspects of the businesses to their subsidiaries. Apple is not going to be located in Uganda, yet the biggest value of Apple is the design of the iPhone. They're not going to bring it to Uganda to remain in California. At the best, we can do assembly. When you assemble an iPhone, you are like China, you earn about 20%, you'll be a middle income country. So again, Uganda needs to think of FDI, of domestic investment rather than foreign investment as the biggest driver of our development.
Thank you very much.
The final point I want to say, yes, the final point I want to say is Kampala and Saleh. Kampala produces about 65% of Uganda's GDP and about 75% of our tax revenues. That city and its infrastructure, if you look at it, it's actually a dead city. If in the next 5 years we do not invest in improving the infrastructure around Kampala for people to move rather than spend 4 hours in a traffic jam every day, we will not be able to unclog the heart of Uganda. The heart of Uganda, which is Kampala, is clogged with cholesterol. So if you are talking of NDP3 and you do not have a massive infrastructure investment into Kampala, the way we have done with national trunk roads and with the electricity, we shall have a log jam. Our heart will, Uganda will have a heart attack and it will collapse, cardiac arrest, and it will die.
General Saleh. Yes, sir. Now, I'll give you the honor as my co-host to close this program with the following remarks. So before you do this, there is a caller or a listener that came through and seems to agree with you in the saying that unless the airlines and the privileged go to the poor and listen to their problems, it may not be today or tomorrow, but Uganda will explode. True. They say that the airline people do not understand how the poor are tackled, and those with Uganda should get the problem in Uganda. That man that has sent you this message, I must apologize to our listeners that we are having a bit of intermittency in our broadcasting connectivity, but considering that these are the last 3 minutes and they are now held by you, General Saleh, I think we'll conclude the program constructively. Over to you and let's conclude it.
Thank you very much. Thank the organizers. But before I conclude, I want to appreciate the following agencies which have participated with us in this awareness campaign: MD Postbank, ED Yuri, ED Nabrik, Chairperson NPA, ED UCDA, CEO of UDB, ED of UDC, MD of NEC, MD of UETCL, ED KCCA, CEO of UNOC, Chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission, Chairperson of the Local Government Finance Commission, ED, MD of National Water, ED NADS, and ED Uganda Export Promotion Board. So I'm going to give you certificates of support for this awareness campaign after we close the. Number 2, I want the CDF to take the challenge, the question posed by the chairperson NPA, because it's directed towards him, whether they fully understand the current threats, which I believe they do very well. Then this one is about the UDF. I don't know whom to give it to, so that when you are talking about agro-industrialization, you contact these agencies directly. This one I give Kuraije. Then for my co-host, I want to give you this paper so that you clearly see the disconnection between the NRMG and the NRMO. Lastly, I want to appeal to everybody to join this group called NICE UG, NICE Uganda. It's called National Initiative for Civic Education, which is an effort to de-escalate confusion, to de-escalate the hate, the misconceptions, and so on. I don't know whom to give it to.
I will receive it on their behalf, General.
The media, at least that's for Kasiate. Then I advised the army, the security cluster, to use these technical institutions, because I think you are going to be facing a lot of arrests, I think, and whatever. I was suggesting that you take this one. This is for the IGP or for you. You use these institutions instead of taking those guys to Rizera, the ones you will be arresting. you take them to these institutions and hold them there until, because you're going to, don't look at them criminally, look at them like people who are just emotional.
Misled.
Not me, they're just, it is emotions against issues. For me, I'm the happiest person today. You have made my
For me, I just wanted you to help me with this Kakuta issue, Kakuta family issue. This one, please take it seriously. I have distributed the documents and he just looks through, because when this is a very big danger. It incites people and it's not real. If you go through it, but it is on all the social medias. Help us to also calm down our emotions as a group. Then number two, I don't know whom to give that huge file of the land issues, because all the thieves of the land are likely to be found in that book. So I give it to who?
You promise to give it to Honorable Semudu who accused you of being an archdeacon in land grabbing?
No. He's the biggest dweller. For me, this is a compilation.
You said Law Reform Commission could take
I think so. I think the Law Reform Commission could take it.
So Esther Sophia, are you here to represent the Law Reform Commission?
Yes. Give it her. Then lastly, really I'm grateful to Capital Radio. I'm very grateful to Capital Radio because this is the first time in the 3 months that an elite radio station has tried to understand OWC. Because there was a total misunderstanding, but I'm happy that you took up the challenge and you have brought us this far. So clap for yourself, I think. And with that, we have, you are the one closing. Go ahead and close.
It's 91.3 Capital FM, Capital Gang, coming to you live from Guru, where we've concluded a 4-hour marathon of this conversation, broadcasting across the country. My name is Simon Kasiate, who has had the pleasure of hosting this program, co-hosted by General Saleh. Let's now tune over to the score to pick up all the entertainment and sports news as it were. But stay tuned, it's your fresh station.